What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I'm absolutely honored to introduce you all to ritual abuse, mind control, and organized abuse survivor, overcomer, and whistleblower, devoted wife and loving mother, holistic health practitioner and nutritionist, aspiring writer and author, content creator, and an incredible woman on a mission to create a space where others feel safe enough to speak about their own experiences, Brittany. A little bit about Brittany and what you guys can expect to hear about on today's episode. Born on July 29th, under the lingering trail of Hailey's Comet, Brittany entered a world steeped in generational darkness. For at least 3 generations on both sides, her family carried cycles of abuse, addiction, betrayal, narcissism, and silent female servitude. Freemasonic ties also ran deep, connections that often shielded evil instead of stopping it. From age 3, trauma marked Brittany's body and spirit. Weekdays brought survival with her mother, her main abuser, and weekends offered fragile safety with loving grandparents. Recognized as being gifted and talented, she was placed in gifted and talented programs in school, yet she still faced red flags no one addressed, and when she tried to speak, her words fell on deaf ears. She learned silence. For years, she numbed the agony with pharmaceuticals and Western medicine while raising 3 beautiful children as an adult. Then Easter 2011 became her holy crucible. Life-changing events occurred that impacted her family deeply. However, in the aftermath, God moved supernaturally. Every addiction vanished and memories flooded back. But this time, healing began. Leaning fully on the Holy Spirit and her family, Brittany left behind therapy that only stirred pain. She instead embraced somatic healing, holistic nutrition, herself becoming an advanced practice holistic nutritionist, prayer, and writing her memoir, Expose the Darkness. She learned that trauma lives in the body until brought into the light. Piece by piece, she has released decades of suppressed emotion, broken bloodline curses, and chose her children's safety over family loyalty. Her mother later went to prison for organized crime, bringing a measure of justice. Today, Brittany stands radiant and free, a living miracle. She ended the generational trauma. Her children only know love and safety. From silenced survivor to bold voice and advocate, she transformed hyper-independence into humble strength and self-hatred into fierce purpose. Through social media, her writing, and her holistic practice, she now advocates for survivors and stronger protections for children. Brittany's message burns with resurrected power. Quote, "I believe you. You are not crazy. Healing is possible, not by time alone, but by surrendering to God who turns ashes into beauty. Your pain prepared you for purpose. Speak your truth. Expose the darkness. The same strength that helped you endure will help you rise," unquote. To survivors, Brittany says, "You were never meant to carry this alone. God rewrites bloodlines through brave hearts like yours." To helpers and to society, Brittany says, "Believe us, listen deeply, build systems that protect instead of punish truth tellers. Empathy and spiritual grounding change everything." Brittany is proof that no pit is too deep and no curse too strong for God's redeeming hand. From indentured shadows and ritual darkness to a blazing platform of hope, she rose. One woman's obedience broke generations of chains and now lights the way for thousands. She's not just a survivor, she's a lighthouse, a chain breaker, and a testament that resurrection is real. If you carry hidden wounds, hear her cry across the darkness. Rise, your story is not over. The light wins because warriors like us refuse to stay silent. God is ready to turn your greatest pain into your greatest purpose. Brittany's life shouts hope to the world. Generational darkness falls when one courageous soul chooses truth, faith, and freedom. And because Brittany rose, so can you. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming today's guest of honor, overcomer and thriver, walking miracle, fierce mama bear, bold truther, survivor advocate, cycle breaker, voice for the voiceless, warrioress, and exposer of the darkness, the one, the only, Brittany. Brittany, it is an honor to have you on today. I'm so excited to finally have you on the show. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for that introduction. That was amazing.
You're welcome. You're so deserving of it. So just a little bit of background. We're going to dive into your story, but you're somebody, I actually met you quite a while ago, and we have been following each other and supporting each other. And you have been watching the podcast. You comment on the videos. You're in the chat sometimes. Some people that are in the community that have been watching the podcast might even recognize you if they saw your handles online, which we'll end up talking about. But we've been talking for a while about having you come on, and the timing just wasn't right for one reason or another. And I'm just really happy that we finally made this happen, because I feel like I already know you. You're already like a sister. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being such a big support system. I love seeing your comments pop up on my videos. And I'm just, I'm grateful that people like you not only bear the burden of your own testimony, but you've opened up your arms in so many ways to help others, whether it's through my channel, through your work, through your advocacy, your social media, and all the other many ways that you touch hearts. And I just want to thank you for your work, because you've done so much to advocate for this community.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your work, because I mean, this has been 2 years in the making now of us doing this. And it was last year I said, when I get my book done, I'm going to come on. And then I was like, no, it's just time. It is time to come on. So I'm glad. Yeah. And I love all your work. If I had this 15 years ago, I wouldn't have felt so alone. We thought we were like the only family that had ever been through something like this. And that's not true. There's thousands of us out here.
Yes.
And you bring them to light, and which nobody would see.
And it's exciting that now we live in a day where people are willing to listen, and they're willing to believe and to sit and witness, instead of just in the past you hear about how everything was just automatically conspiracy theorist and you're crazy. And, so it really is, it's unfortunate that we have so many victims and survivors of these horrific things like what you'll be outlining today. But man, what a great time for people who have gone through darkness to finally see a light, in 2026. And hopefully that just gains more traction moving forward, where, there's more acceptance and more help and more healing for this community. So with that being said, I want to start diving into your incredibly fascinating, inspiring, and just harrowing life that you've lived, and all the events that have led you to where you are today. And I thought we'd start by outlining some of the history of your family and sort of what set you up then to become a victim yourself of these abuses.
Okay, well, I guess I would start with probably my grandma's mother, which would have been my great grandma. They were from the foothills of Appalachia, and they were dirt poor. There were 16 brothers and sisters, so there was a lot of abuse that went on there. But her mother was 14 years old when she had her by an older man, and she was a bastard child in 1928, and that wasn't, that didn't happen back then. So she was the only product of these two people, which happened to be a 32nd degree Mason, and then her mother, who was 14. So then she married another man and had 8 more children with him. And during this time, he had abused my grandma every single day, sexually, physically, all the way up till she was 14, when her father, the Masonic Mason, one of his child seen her walking, and she couldn't walk down the road. She wasn't able to walk physically. So they knew what was going on in the home, and they took her from the house then. And from then on, she went to Florida. She stayed with them a while, and then she met my grandfather and married him in 3 days. And then she was with him for 57 years. So she always knew abuse. That's the only thing she ever knew. And we were told, like, that woman was just a whore. She wasn't a whore. She was a 14-year-old girl. That's not a whore in 1928. Something was obviously horribly going on there. And then it continued with her daughter. And then it continued with my mother, and then me. So, and it stopped with my children. So that was on my grandma's side. And my grandpa's, they all come from strict German heritage. And that's all I ever heard about was, we're German, we're German. We're better than everybody. We work harder, we're smarter, we look better, we're German. And that, I think that comes into some kind of ritualistic bloodline too. I'm not sure where exactly that ties in, but I think it's deep in there. And I've heard one other person on your show talk about the German connection. And I'm going to keep studying that and figuring that out. But then they had my mother. My mother was the baby of five. They had lost a child. Tragically, she had rolled over in between the bed and broke her neck. And one of my aunts who raised me, they had thought that she had done it because she was four. So there was just all this trauma. It just never stopped. And they were trying to find my grandpa at that time, and he was at the bar at 9:30 in the morning. I found this article about it in the newspaper. So like how just devastating for my grandma. The neighbor said she was in the road holding the baby, just crying. So I mean that's so
Mhm.
horrific. And then they thought the 4-year-old did it. So my aunt got sent to her grandparents to live for about 5 years because I don't think they could cope very well with what had happened. And they got pregnant. They had other children, so they had five altogether. And my mother was the baby, and I think that she took a lot of abuse. They ran a farm and they were work horses. They had to work. I mean, when the sun came up till it came down, there was no time for fun. You only ate food and you worked. That's all you could ever do. There was no time for fun. Nobody ever did anything, no vacations, nobody could swim. I mean, it was work, work, work. That's what you do when you're German. That's what we were always told. So she had, I feel like, a miserable life too. And when she turned 16 and got a license, they let her get a job, and then she kind of went very, very wild after that, like drinking and just doing all the things that she wasn't allowed to do because she was so abused and oppressed. And she had also told me too that she was doing any drug they would offer when she was in sixth grade. So when a 10, 11-year old is doing drugs, there's something very wrong here. And everything was always swept under the rug. We never talked about anything. If it happened, it was one thing was mentioned about it, then shoved under the rug. And there's generations of that in this family. So I think that's where my mom, most of her things come from, very deeply rooted.
Oh my goodness. It's such a misconception in society through Hollywood, through the TV, and just miscellaneous ways, stranger danger. We're always taught that abuse just hides in random corners that are away from us. And if we happen to go into that corner, something's going to pop out, the monster under the bed. And we're not ever told that, this stuff happens to people, by people generally who are very close to a child, who are very close to the victim. This is, in a lot of times, people that are abusive were abused, and we're not taught that either. We're just sort of grown up thinking that people just somehow in their life become sort of psychopathic or narcissistic or abusive, and the root cause is so ingrained in exactly what you just outlined, this generational pattern of abuse, and that it kind of gets passed down like other habits, whether it's how a family eats or how a family might exercise or not exercise. There's so many different ways that genetics and things like that come to play, but there's also habitual things that can be passed down. And, if somebody's born into it, it's really hard to see the light that there's a different way to live, and that's why people like you are such miracles, that somehow you see all these examples of unhealthy relationships and things that aren't necessarily love or unconditional, and or safe and healthy and where you're protected, but somehow along the line, you can't ever become that, even though you don't have examples to show you otherwise. And it's just that it's incredible, that you're able to be here and talk about this. On the other side of that, like you said, it stopped with you, and your children have a very different upbringing than what you did, which is just beautiful.
Yes, I love that part.
100%. And so let's talk about your own inception and conception into this world. And I know that it's a little bit more complicated on the biological father side. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your own mom's journey into motherhood and sort of where that left you as a child.
Yeah, my mother became pregnant with me when she was 18. She didn't get to do a whole lot of things, so when she did finally get some freedom, she really went out there. And
Wow.
she had always told me that she was a virgin when she slept with these men because there were supposed to be three men that could have been my dad, and now I think there's five, but she always told me three, but it doesn't make sense. If you're a virgin, you don't sleep with 3 to 5 guys in one night. That's ritualistic right there. I mean, it just is. And then the biological father of mine, which I didn't find out till I was 15, he is a high up Mason as well, which I thought was very, very strange. It's like it's on both sides here. Masons come around. So, I was born and my aunt was actually in the hospital. She worked as a nurse there and she helped deliver me. And she also told me that that summer there were a lot of babies that looked like me that got sent out to Arizona to be adopted out. So they called my dad, I guess, Buddy Love. If this guy was just breeding, he was just breeding all these children. I have siblings all over the place that I don't know about. It's just odd. Like he was a breeder of some sort because what the heck? So he had children and he took care of them, but he knew that I was around, but he didn't want anything to do with me at all. Nothing. And his
Oh,
family knew we were around, but he didn't want anything to do with me at all. And they were the higher up Masonic family. So I think that had a lot to do with it. And I do believe that I was supposed to be like his living sacrifice. Like he bore me and I'm the sacrifice here, the living one, if that makes sense.
yeah. As a baby, do you know if him or these other men that were speculated to be your father, were they involved at all, or was your mom just really on her own, single mom, and trying to do this by herself and didn't have help?
Yeah, she didn't have any help at all. I know this one guy when I came out, it was definitely not his, and he stayed around for a little while, but he had major problems too. So she really didn't have any relationship with anybody, and my grandparents pretty much took over right away because the first story of me home in life is that she put me in the car seat and said, "I'm taking my baby and I'm showing her to my friends," kind of like a teenager would do. And my grandparents were like, "No, you're not." So she said she pulled out the driveway and the door flew open and my car seat rolled out and down into the ditch. And she goes, "Well, then I went and picked you up and then I decided that mom and dad should watch you." And she always referred to my grandparents as mom and dad for me. She would tell me, "Don't tell mom and dad. Don't tell mom and dad. Mom and dad are going to do this." And it's really screwed up thinking about it now. I'm like, why would she refer to them as my mom and dad? Like she's my mother. It just didn't make any sense.
Right. And one of the interesting things that you had mentioned in your testimony is about Hailey's Comet. And I just wanted you to just comment on Hailey's Comet, because there does seem to be a lot of these interesting global events sometimes, or supernatural kind of anomaly in the weather that tends to happen around the births of a lot of the guests that come on my podcast.
Yeah, my mom was going to name me Hailey because of Hailey's Comet. And she really wasn't involved in like any kind of like studying astral stuff, I thought. But I think she was more than I think about it. She probably was. But yeah, she said she was going to name me that because the comet was coming down. It was supposed to destroy a bunch of stuff. So I guess maybe I am Hailey's Comet. I did destroy a bunch of stuff.
And that was coinciding when Hailey's Comet was in the news, and it was speculated it could destroy things. That was right as you were being born.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I was born on July 29th. And if you take my date back, it dates it back to the end of October, which I heard there was this big party and that's where all this stuff took place, which is another high holiday. Could have been a high holiday. I can't confirm, but
Totally. Yeah. Halloween or right around there. And yeah, you're absolutely right. That's interesting that you were able to piece that together and make that connection.
well, I've only talked to my biological dad a literal handful of times. He reached out to me on Facebook Messenger, called me like a year ago and was just all messed up and saying weird stuff. So I was like, okay. So I sent him a message and I said, "Well, now that I know that you're a Mason and what my birth date was I a ritual or what?" And he didn't answer me, but I'm just going to throw that out there. Very like grandiose and pompous and thinks he's great. And I don't know, he just had a different personality that I wouldn't like, and just very self-centered and felt very self-serving, very just about him. And he come from a wealthy family. It's probably how you act when you do that. I don't know.
Totally.
But
And
yeah, only about 5 times have I seen or talked to him ever.
wow. Oh my goodness. That's amazing
Yeah.
though, either way, that you were able to, confirm that through a DNA test and, kind of track him down somehow and have him see if that was true instead of just never knowing who your actual father was.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what my mom's game was behind that of saying these different guys. I'm not sure because nobody knows but her and those men what happened that night. I can
Yeah,
guess, but
totally. Now, as a small child, what was life like for you being with this, sort of fractured and damaged mother in a sense that's
yeah,
so
she was
young?
very
She's still
fragile.
a teenager. I'm guessing she was 19 maybe whenever she had you, if she got pregnant at 18. I mean,
Yeah.
she's such a baby. And then, being a generational trauma survivor herself, going through her own family line. What was this like for you growing up in that type of environment?
Oh, it was rough. And she picked horrible men that treated her awful. There
Oh,
was so much domestic violence. I mean, there was domestic violence every day, all these men. And she stayed with this one guy for quite a while. He kidnapped me and her at gunpoint in front of my grandparents, and we were gone for 3 days. I remember bits and
what?
pieces of it. And like, she still was with him for 3 years after that. I mean, she was just so abused. She sat there and took it. Oh, she didn't know she deserved better at all, and she didn't know she just thought that's what she deserved. And that guy, he was awful. He was just like totally psychopathic. He was tried to set he set our house on fire. He would throw things in the window. He would leave notes that said, "I watched you sleep." Just very crazy. I watched him physically rape her 2 times as a child, as like a punishment to get her in control. So he was very abusive. And one good thing about that, he went down to Florida and he tried to do this to another woman, and that woman's brother killed him. So he was a
Oh
goner. So it's like he got what he deserved.
my gosh. Whoa. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. That
And
has
he
to
was this like local rock star. So he would always drive me around in this van where I literally got kidnapped, this black van, and it had leopard curtains and leopard stuff, and I'm like obsessed with leopard things. So I'm like, I think that's a psychological connection to that. But they took his van and they compacted it and they put it on this tombstone with a giant guitar, like he was some great guy. I'm like, well, he was a woman abuser. I mean,
Oh my goodness. And you mentioned your mother ironically called your grandparents mom and dad to you, and you are actually in their care pretty often also.
yeah, they were continuously fighting for me. Like, them and my 2 aunts were continuously fighting for me. They knew stuff was going on and they would report it and they would do everything, but nothing would come out of it because my mom was friends with everyone, all the people that needed to do anything about it.
Oh my goodness. And so how did your mom treat you? You know, she's being abused, she's bringing these men around you, so you're witnessing her being abused. What was she like as a mother, especially being so young and under the circumstances?
I remember I know that like her first goal, which is everybody's goal in this family, you gotta work, gotta work, gotta work. So it doesn't matter what's happening, work is first, always. You need to go make that money. So I remember her working a lot, but then being extremely overwhelmed and stressed, and then she would take that all out on me. Everything. So all of her whatever, she would just pull that down to me. So all her stuff would just come on to me. And that's how she lived. And everybody in our family called me the whipping post. So even as a child, they'd be like, "Well, Brittany is the whipping post." I just took all the stuff she couldn't handle, and everybody knew it.
And was the abuse that she was doing to you, was it mostly physical, or
Yeah,
was she
lots of
very
physical.
psychologically abusive too?
Yes,
Yeah.
psychologically, very, very manipulative, very gaslighting. Definitely mentally, physically, emotionally. Those things came from her for sure.
Oh my goodness. And did the abuse she incurred from these men, did they ever abuse you, men that came over?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Lots of different abuse from different men. Yep. And each one that she stayed with for a while, each of them have a different type of abuse that they abused me with.
And so this really started at the point that you were born. Essentially, you were born into this very unstable environment. You didn't really have a normal childhood
No.
before at any point. It was just you were thrown into this really chaotic household.
Yes, and I was born July 29th, and my mom was telling me about being out drinking and doing cocaine on these barrels on this lake on July 4th. And I'm like, wait a second, I was born July 29th. So all these people now have told me, well, your mom was trying to get rid of you, while I was in utero. So she had told me that she had always told me she didn't want me. She should have had an abortion. She had always said those
Oh,
things. And she was just, that was just her.
oh my goodness, that's so sad. Did you see glimmers of goodness in her, or did she always seem to be in these really, toxic mind frames and obviously being abused by men that she was with? Did you see a different side of her at some points too that
Yes.
seemed
Yes.
like
And
she wanted to
that's
get better, be better?
that's what kept me around her till I was 28, those little glimmers of good things.
Yeah.
Like, well, I know deep down it's this. I know deep down, but because I didn't know what love was, and I definitely didn't know what love was for my mother, because she would do all these terrible things to me and then buy me something and say, "I love you." And I'm like, what? So that was love. I was like, okay. Yeah, there was good things in her. That's why, that's why I stayed. We would have good times together, but there were way more bad times than there would good. And I would just hold on to that little sliver of goodness, like, oh, she's going to change. And everyone in the family, all the women, we would all say the same thing. So they kind of conditioned me to, they would always say, forgive and forget, forgive and forget. And I thought that was forgiving and forgetting. And no, that was just allowing abuse, is what that was.
Yes.
But I'd hold on to those little strings, hoping that it would be better. All of us did. We all hoped that for her.
And I think it's like that in so many of our relationships. Often when women leave as adults, abusive men, one of the first things people will say once, the story might get out or she speaks out is, well, why didn't you leave earlier? Why would you stay? And it's those glimmers, people, when they hear of abuse, they picture it to just all be 100% dark all the time. And even though emotionally being in that environment might be dark all the time, there are glimmers that you see of people that do make you hold on, especially when you're like so starved for like attention or love, and you get this little moment of like fun or actual love from a parent or attention or, healthy physical touch where like you just feel close to them. You like want to keep pushing for more of those moments. It's like, it's a human need of ours. So we're like, oh, well, maybe if I do this and this and this, I'll get that again. And I think children tend to also carry a lot of responsibility. Well, if I just did this, my mom would love me. Maybe if I work harder, maybe if I'm quieter, maybe if I don't cry, mom will give me more hugs or, love me more. Did you go through that emotional roller coaster where you were sort of turned into a pleaser at all, trying to get more of those?
Oh, yeah.
Come up? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, big time. Yeah, I absolutely did that all the time. And I just enabled her. I did everything for her. I was basically her parent. I just wanted her to turn out right. I just wanted her to do this or that. And we would always just hope. I would just hope that would happen, but it didn't. It would just get worse. And her manipulation would be way worse. And you're just stuck in the cycle and you can't get out of it because everybody in my family's saying the same thing. So I'm like, okay, she's going to get better. She's going to get better. And she tore all of them to pieces too in different ways. She did all kinds of horrible things to them too, as they were hoping for that glimmer of just goodness.
Yeah. It's like, because that's what we all want each other is for, the goodness to come out, the potential, and to think they're strong enough to overcome it. If they can do it once, they can, create a different pattern. But it's really sad to learn how many people don't want that for themselves. And no matter how much we want it or want to people please, we can't force that on somebody. And that's so hard for a child to grow up in an environment like that.
Yes, and my aunts and my grandma, they would have to reassure me continuously. They would say, well, your mom loves you. She does love you. She just loves you in a different way. Your mom, she's tired. She's stressed out. They would make all these excuses, but none of it was love. And I don't think they knew either. They didn't know that that wasn't love either.
Right.
Because they were used to it from their father. Because I feel like my grandparents were absolutely perfect to me. I mean, they were. And I think that they were trying to make up for all of their history, honestly. Now that I see so much about it, they were trying to recreate what happened with their children. So they were perfect to me, but they were not perfect to my mom at all. So, I mean, I think that caused a lot of resentment too with my mom. How come you can do that for her, but you never could do it for me?
Yeah.
And then she acted like her dad because I could not figure out for the life of me where my mother came from. Like, how did this crazy, organized crime behavior come from? Like, from my grandparents? No way. Now that I've done all this research and went back and all this stuff, I'm like, it was my grandpa. Yes, it was my grandpa. Yeah, he started it.
Did you have strict rules or different ways that she was controlling in the home, or was it the opposite and she didn't really keep an eye on you and was not very protective of you or gave you structure?
Yeah, no rules whatsoever. Only appearance wise. When I was younger, she only cared what other people would think about grades or something like that. She would beat me for different things like that for appearances. But she let me do whatever I wanted. I had no rules, no nothing. And then we started doing drugs together when I was 13, 14. So the physical abuse stopped then, but it moved right on to the drugs, just another. And she was definitely controlling me that way. Absolutely. And she was just controlling, but not in the manner where I couldn't do anything like she was, but controlling in the bigger picture wise. Very manipulative.
Yes, almost abusive. Like she had your mind controlled, even if you were physically able to go do whatever you wanted. And yeah, very, very manipulative and narcissistic.
Yeah. I mean,
And
she,
so,
even in the little contact that I've had in the last 5 years, when she's wrote letters and things like that to me, they're so manipulative. They're so manipulative, and they are so no accountability whatsoever. Well, I didn't do that. I'm like, I don't care that you're 60 some years old now. I remember what you were like. It doesn't matter.
oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. What a chaotic childhood you had, and just, trying to cope with that all alone, even not having tons of siblings like some of the other generations in your family did, and not having a father around either to give you sort of that protective masculine essence of your life, and then not having sort of that feminine leader either in your life. And
Yeah,
so,
it is a lot.
yeah. And so what was school like for you? Carrying all this baggage at home and then trying to function as at school as a normal kid. What was that like for you? Did you excel because you were away, or did that really impact you even at school too?
Oh, it definitely impacted me at school, and I despise school. Since I was 6 years old, I despised it. I was like, I took a state test for the first time, and I just filled in the bubbles. I'm like, this is stupid, and I turned it in. And they were like, "Are you done?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not checking that over." And then they put me in. Well, they called it MAP. It was the gifted and talented thing. So
Yeah.
right, because I was like, this is stupid. I knew school was stupid at 6 years old, but no, I had a rough time. I didn't want to. I didn't want to learn anything. Nobody in there could understand what I was going through. I couldn't relate to anybody because they had pretty great lives. And I'm like, yeah, this doesn't really. And teachers, oh my gosh, children's services was called so many times for so many different things. And I remember specifically at 6, they had called me in to talk to them. And I did tell them some stuff. And by the time I got home, my mom knew about it. She knew about it. And I knew right then I will never tell any of these adults anything again. She
Wow.
just had this, she knows a lot of people, I'll say that. She's got a wide crew.
It seems like from so young, you not only, sort of felt this responsibility to like pull your mother out of her darkness and, to keep trying to get those little glimmers to become more frequent, but you also had to make so many adult decisions like that as a child where were experiencing so many heavy things at home. I'm sure going to school felt like almost kind of silly, from having
Yeah, it did.
such adult things that you're dealing with in your real life, and then you go to school and it's like these sort of childish things that you're dealing with.
Yeah, yeah, just like that. Exactly.
What do you remember about the gifted and talented program? It's interesting. A lot of survivors that I know, which is, again, I think people think, they feel this obligation to sort of infantilize survivors. Like you guys are kind of like these very delicate, people who might have had an unfortunate upbringing and might not be to, the level that they're at. And it's like, no, like, do you realize what trauma does to somebody? Like, so many people that have come on my podcast have extremely high IQs. Like you literally have to grow up and be an adult as a child. And like your brain develops differently, obviously from the trauma as well. But there's also ways that you see these patternings of so many abuse survivors end up being recognized as being gifted and talented. They have high IQs. They excel at, math and like these very complex subjects that other children might not, be recognized for or do well in. But there also is this weird anomaly with the gifted and talented program where a lot of people don't remember. They're like, I know I was in that, but I don't have memories of it. Are you that way, or do you
No,
remember?
I have a few memories actually. I definitely remember the swishing, the pink fluid. We swished every Friday. I remember that for a whole minute. We'd have to watch the clock. And at that time I was like, oh, it's just mouthwash. But now it's pink fluid. I'm not sure.
Do you think it was fluoride? What do you think it was?
They said it was supposed to be fluoride, but it was pink fluid. I don't know what, I don't really know if it really was fluoride or not. They probably have something better than that in there, I'm guessing. I remember little tabs too. We would have these little things to chew, and then it would show plaque on our teeth, allegedly. And then we'd rinse it off with that pink swish on Fridays. And I have a specific memory because I do love music. But I have this memory, this guy, he gave me this piece of paper, and then he had a boom box or a ghetto blast or whatever they called it back then. And he would play songs, and he told me to draw them how I feel them. So I drew them all, and then he said, now color them in like this weird pattern stuff, and colored in like almost like stained glass. And I will still sit and do that doodling today. And I'm like, what the heck was that about? Like, why? I don't know what that was, but it's always stuck with me. And I had multiple hearing tests. I was told they were hearing tests. I kept having to go back in the booth and do all these things several times with these brown headphones. So I don't know.
It's so interesting, you know, some of these things that people come out with, even like swishing a pink liquid, like regardless, why would that be the school's responsibility to get plaque off your teeth? You know, it's just interesting how invasive some of these things were when they could almost look innocent on the outside, like, oh, well, we're just caring about children. Well, why don't the regular kids get that? Why is it just you go to a gifted program and like now the plaque on their teeth is like important?
Right, now you're worried about that.
Like, what in the world? Like, there's not other things to, you know, I don't know. It's very, very bizarre, but I appreciate you sharing that because it's fascinating. You also, you know, going through all this hardship at home and in school, like you're almost bored because it's like you're so above everything that you're, and not in like an egotistical way, just like your intelligence level from what you had to develop as a child into this adult as a little kid, you know, school to you, like you were just kind of like running circles around people, even though your circumstances were so dire and dark, which is really fascinating.
Yes, and I just didn't like school at all. I still don't. I think it's ridiculous. And when I mean that, like, I had a nun though, and when my mom met this one boyfriend that I absolutely hated this guy, she moved us away with him. She met him in DUI school. I mean, she met him there, and then we moved in with him. It was very shortly after that, and I just hated this guy. And my aunt had fixed it up to where I didn't have to go to that school. I could go to private school, which was a private Catholic school. So she would have like the nuns would allow my family to secretly come see me when my mom would take me away, which was often. So they would allow they would come there so they could see me during school hours, and she didn't know anything about it. So I did have one nun, and she knew quite a bit, and she was very helpful through the years. But I do think there was something about the programming and all that at the Catholic school too, because that comes in later.
Yeah. Now you were switching between your time you'd spend with your mother. You'd also go and you spent a significant amount of time with your grandparents. Did your grandparents pick up on your abuse, or was that ever something that was sort of, yeah.
Yes. That's when they would call my aunts and then children's services and all the things you're supposed to do that never work. They would try. And then my mom would just use me out as a weapon. She would say, well, if you don't give me this or buy me this or whatever, you're not going to have Brittany. And you know what's going to happen when I have her. Like I was a threat, like a threat to be harmed. If you don't do this, then I'm going to harm her. I'll take her here and do this. And they were just terrified all the time. And she ruled the roost like she did. She ruled everything. And she played me like a pawn with them.
And what about in school? Was there ever anybody that saw you or witnessed you in school and said, I think there might be something going on? Yeah.
Yeah, about every single grade up until ninth grade. Yes, of every grade. Children's services was called every single time, and not a damn thing would happen.
Oh.
Yeah, and like the very first time, and I remember my first sexual assault when I was 3, and I remember the man's name, and he's actually a friend of mine's father who is dead, and this was my mom's buddies too. But this is kind of a big one. I have this mark on my inner left leg, and I could never figure out what it was for all these 40 years. Everybody kept saying it's a birthmark. It was a birthmark. Well, my family's like, well, you didn't have a birthmark. You weren't born with a birthmark. And I remember getting this when I was 3 years old from that sexual assault. Well, my mom just kept saying birthmark all these years. And when you repeat something enough, it just stays in your head. And my cousin, who's 10 years older than me, is like, I changed your diapers. You didn't have a birthmark. I said, I know I didn't. So I put the picture on TikTok, and this lady goes, that looks like a handprint. And I'm like, what? So then I have my husband. It was a handprint. It's been a handprint this whole time. I literally have a handprint on my inner thigh.
Oh my goodness, at 3 years old was your first sexual assault. Oh my goodness.
Yep, and it left that mark. Yep. And I remember, like, that's the first time I also remember dissociating too. I remember that happening, everything else is blank. And then I come back to and I'm sitting on the toilet at my grandparents and I was trying to wipe this off my leg, trying to get it off my leg, whatever it was. And
Oh,
that memory is seared with me. And my grandparents and my aunts and all them were like, well, we think that she got it from training pants, like training underwear, which that didn't happen. But they said I wouldn't take them off for a very long time. I kept leaving the plastic pants on. I didn't want nobody to touch them. Well, because I had just been sexually assaulted as a small child.
oh my goodness. Did you have other sexual assaults as a child also?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, lots and lots of different sexual assaults. That's the first one I remember. And then one time I remember I had to be 4. My aunt took me, we went to get a SANE evaluation at the hospital. And I remember our whole family being at one family's house. And then my aunt takes me to get this evaluation. And I remember having to get dressed in the gown. And I don't remember the exam, but I remember after. I remember her sitting on the bench and she was crying. And I'm like, why is she crying? And years later, to like 10 years later, I found out my aunt said, your mom was in there, her and the cop were laughing, and she was talking about where they were going to go and start drinking. She said, I knew right then that nothing was going to happen. And then the social worker, she did the same thing with him, who turned out to be one of her friends. He lost his license later on, had to go to prison. He was into bestiality in children. So
Oh
no
my
wonder they all
goodness.
got along so well.
It's so interesting hearing testimonies like yours where you hear, for example, your grandmother, people at school, even doctors and people handling your health knew there was something wrong. And there were so many instances that it was reported and nothing happened. Yet, on the contrary, when an innocent parent has a child that's not abusing the kid, CPS is so quick to pull that child away if an abuser is the one that reports it, So it's so interesting
Yeah.
to see that patterning in your family, that you were being abused, nothing was done. But if you weren't being abused and somebody happened to tell, then you might have gotten taken away, according to
Yeah.
statistics. It's like innocent parents get the children taken away, and then abusers have full custody of the child almost always.
Almost always. And I think it's designed that way. I think the whole system is designed that way. It's designed to feed into them.
I do too, especially it's more profitable that way. I've had
Oh yeah.
the family courts compared to a child trafficking scheme, a pyramid of children being the commodities that go through there. So you do see that. And you also see, the negligence of CPS on a way that it possibly could have made a difference in a child's life. And they don't, they just allow the child to be abused and look the other way with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. And so you're getting bored at school, although you are just absolutely intelligent and you're getting placed in gifted programs, even though you could care less about it.
Yes, and I was bad. Like I was acting out. Like, I was just bad. I was not going to sit there and listen to stuff. I was a class clown. I would say funny stuff all the time. I would just do funny. I was bored. I didn't want to be there. I was like, this is stupid. Then we had this giant globe in the back of the room. It was huge. And I punched it and I said, meteor, and I punched a hole in it. I got in a lot of trouble for that one. I just did things like that all the time. They took I had like this slap bracelet, because this was 30 years ago.
Oh
I had
yeah,
these
slap
these
bracelets.
binoculars. Well, the teacher had took it from me, and I went back in after school was over when the janitor was there, and I went back and I stole all my stuff. Well, they found out that I had stole my stuff, and I was 6. I was in first grade, and I got in trouble for that. But I was like, I'm taking my stuff back.
What did sort of the progression of all this look like, going from, a 6-year-old who's misbehaving in school, yet you're also super intelligent, you're being abused at home, you're having to be an adult as well. What did the, middle school and high school, what were these years like in school for you?
I'm thinking middle school, right in about 8th grade, my mom actually marries this guy who's only, I think he was either 8 to 10 years older than me. He
Okay.
felt like my older brother. And this guy got me into the hippie festival scene. We were really, really, I mean, he just threw me into that and I loved it. I loved everything that came with it. I loved the music. I mean, he just introduced me to that. And that was like an indoctrination lifestyle. And I began to do that for many years after that. But lots and lots of starting with drugs in 8th grade. So I was always smoking weed and just on and on. It progresses. And heavy drugs in 8th and 9th grade, because that's what my mom and her boyfriends were doing. And they liked me to do it right along with them because it just gave them a better grip on me.
Oh my goodness. And this was at home? Your mom was
Yes.
literally doing drugs with you whenever you're like
Oh,
13
yeah.
years old.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Did that carry on like in school? Like did you used to like consume before school, or were you
Oh,
getting into
yeah.
drugs? Yeah.
All of it. Yes, the whole thing. And then I started working when I was 14, like everybody else in our family. I just work. I was making really good money when I was 16. I made like $32,000 all those years ago. So I thought I was rich coming from poverty. I thought I was rich. And I had moved out with my boyfriend when I was 16. So we had like a whole house. I mean, we had everything. We had an
Oh my
apartment. We had
goodness.
all the stuff that an adult did because I just figured I was already an adult. But yes, the abuse stopped, and I will thank my stepdad for this because we would all party together. I mean, oh my gosh, they would get so trashed, all kinds of drugs, alcohol. They'd have me driving the car. We'd be in different counties, all this stuff, and I'd have to get them home and everything. Well, she started beating on me for no reason, and my stepdad Craig, he let her do it for a little while, and then he grabbed her. He grabbed her and he beat the shit out of her. He did. He beat her, and then he took a TV and he threw it on her, one of those big box TVs, and he threw it on her, and he said, "If you ever touch her again, I will fucking kill you." And I was like, "Okay, go
Really?
Craig," because no one had ever done that for me before, ever. And usually it was my job to pull these men off of her. So if she's getting beat, it's my job to, intervene and do these things. And
Totally.
I was like, all right, Craig. So that's the one good thing about Mr. Craig, I can say.
Oh my goodness. That's really fascinating too, because it seems to be, your mother obviously had a pattern of dating abusive or narcissistic people, due to her own trauma, not healing it and sort of just reliving that pattern. And so it's really fascinating too to see how somehow that patterning changed in some way, even though she didn't necessarily change. She ended up being with somebody who protected you instead of like all these other men who, not only abused her in front of you, but were also abusive to you.
Yeah, and I mean he was abusive in different ways. Like he just was a
Mhm.
mess too. And he like he would not work. He didn't work at all. He would sleep all day. He would pretend he went to work. He was just a real mess. And they would physically fight, and they were basically conning each other, and they were years apart. That's another thing. My mom always dated very young people, which leads me back to her abuse. Like there's something here that's very wrong with you that you want these men who are younger. They're not even men, like this is weird. And that stepdad, I mean, he introduced me to the whole like hippie festival drug scene. We started following bands and like, all this different stuff. So he introduced me to that lifestyle, and the abuse with my mom at that point changed. So instead of physical abuse now, well, we would fight. We would physically fight. If there was going to be any physical abuse, I was going to hit back after that. So we would just square up. We would just square up. If she thought she was going to do something, we would just square up with it after that. And yeah, I know. I know it's so crazy. Gonna square up.
But I mean, good for you though. You don't get that opportunity as a small child. You're forced to endure whatever is coming at you. So I think that's really good that you ended up creating that boundary for yourself of like, no, you come in my space, you're going to have to deal with me. You can't just come in here anymore.
Yeah, and my stepdad actually did that. That was the one good thing he did do.
Yeah,
So
that's incredible. So he wasn't a perfect person. He wasn't a non-abusive person. He didn't abuse children. He'd
yeah,
abuse
yeah, that's
mother.
it. He didn't abuse children. He was
Yeah,
neglectful to his own child, but he didn't abuse them.
right. Oh my goodness. How
And probably
interesting.
because he was abused too. I'm sure he was abused.
Sure. Yeah. And unfortunately, it seems like those types of people like attract each other, if they haven't healed their trauma.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like those spirits, boop, boop. They come right together.
100%. Yes. And so I'm kind of curious to hear a little bit about the kind of festival hippie scene that you were involved with. Could you talk a little bit about, what bands did you follow and like how old were you whenever you were crusading through this sort of different element of your life that he introduced you to?
Yeah, oh my gosh, there were so many bands. Well, the Grateful Dead, that was the main one, and we would see like the leftover
Okay.
members because the main guy had already died in '95. So he started me out on the Grateful Dead tour and all the people, and I just loved it. Like I fell in love with it. And really that's how me and my husband got together. Because if it wasn't for hippie jam band stuff,
No
we
way.
wouldn't have connected like we did.
Oh my
So
gosh, that's so cute.
everything all rolls out how it's supposed to. But you know, when the hippie scene, and it's nice on the surface, it's peace, love, and happiness, but you
Yeah.
scratch that surface and it's trafficking and all these different things underneath. I mean, it looks good, but it's not underneath. And of course, people like my mom and her boyfriend are going to find those things. But yeah, we went on tour. We would go the whole weekends camping and just be on tour with these people. We traveled with Fish. We traveled with the members of the Grateful Dead and Acoustic Hookah. That was our biggest ones.
Did your mother go with you guys, or was it you and him?
She did. My mom did, but she really wasn't into it. She was there for the drugs. Pretty much, she said that.
Oh,
She didn't like that music, but she liked that there was a trafficking drug scene there because there was. She fit right in with that.
was there ever a dynamic between her and you where she was envious of you, even if it's in a way of, you're bonding with her new man and you guys have this thing in common now? You're both going to these jam bands. Not that your intention is to date this man, but I see this a lot with some of these, vulnerable moms, that their sort of jealousy and their unhealed trauma kind of gets poured onto their daughters in really kind of twisted ways. Did you experience that at all? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I feel like my mom was so jealous of my husband and I's relationship, especially. Like she did
Oh,
not.
that's
She
sad.
our whole all of our families. Now that we're 15 years out, we look back and see they tried to destroy us at every turn. They did not want us to be together. They did not want any of the things that we had because they didn't have them, and they still don't have them, and they're probably never going to get them.
Yeah. Oh, that's really sad. That especially because
Yeah.
you found like a healthy love, and it's sad when your own family isn't happy that you overcame everything that should have made you, a statistic of dating abusers and having sort of a life like your mother did, single mom life, and going through all these men, and you found happiness and they can't even be happy for you. It's really sad.
Well, they're also like, I think that she wanted me to be in her position. I think she wanted to drag me down to her and she wanted me to feel every single thing that she's been through. She wanted me just like that. And well, I moved out when I was 16 with my boyfriend, and well, he became my fiance. I get pregnant. We intentionally had a baby because we were going to create a new life at 17 and 19. We're going to create a family that we need because that's real smart. But we did that intentionally, and I almost had to have a forced abortion because I was on a medication and they said, no, you're not allowed to have a baby on this. They almost forced me to do it. And I said no. I absolutely said no. And my son is healthy and wonderful. But
Oh,
my fiance, after all that, that was 3 months pregnant, he dies in a car accident. So yeah, so I'm driving up to it after work. I see my mom's car and I thought it was her or her husband, Craig. I was like, are one of them in an accident? And it turned out to be my fiance. Yeah.
oh my goodness. How did that impact you? How old were you? That was
17.
17. Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
Yeah. Oh, that was probably the worst thing of my whole life, honestly. That was probably the
Oh,
worst incident of my whole life. It was horrific. But I mean, literally, God blessed me with my son. If I did not have my son, if I was not pregnant, I would have ended it there. Because I had already been through enough. I was like, this is enough. I thought this was all I was ever going to have to go through, and then you do this. Now there's
yeah.
this. But if I had a Doppler from our nursing agency and I would listen to my son's heartbeat every night. And if it wasn't for that, no, I couldn't have gotten through it without being pregnant. I couldn't have.
Oh, yeah. And
And
having
then I had
something
to
else.
move back in with her. It was like for 3 months. It was
No.
terrible. I was like, oh my gosh. And I ran out of there again. Again.
How did she react to you being pregnant? And then also, what was that like, losing this man that you had planned on spending your life with, and then sort of having to go back to this life of abuse,
Oh, that it was terrible. It was just awful. It was like all of my worst fears were coming true. Now I'm going to be a single mom just like her, but not for the same reasons. For
right,
me, I mean, it was
exactly.
like
Yes.
all I wanted was my child to have a mother and a father, and now we're back at square one again. And I think she loved that I was vulnerable. She loved that I was hurting. She loved those things so she could come in and manipulate, and she sure did. She manipulated.
So what was that like for you, like being pregnant so young? Were you terrified? Were you still in school at the time whenever
Yeah,
you
I
were
was a
pregnant?
senior. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was a senior, and I had been in work programs my whole high school because they knew I would just drop out because I was not. I would rather make money than sit in that class. I really hated it. So I did the basic that I had to do, and I bounced out of there. But no, it was very difficult. It was the worst situation of my whole life. It was very, very hard. And then, like, to look over, the only person that I had was my mom. Like, after all this, I'm like, really, this is what I have. So it was like forced right back into her.
Yes.
And the whole accident thing, there's some stuff on that too that's very bizarre. This was
Really?
on December 23rd, which is also a high holiday. So this is on December 23rd, and she never ever, he didn't even have a license. She never ever let him drive this car, never once. And there were two other drug dealers' kids in the car. None of it made any sense. And they took this tiny car to go pick up. They were supposed to be picking up bedroom furniture. And I had called while I was at work, and they were supposed to be getting a box truck. So none of it made any sense. I'm like, why? None of it made any sense at all.
Oh my
And to
goodness.
me,
So,
again, it feels very ritualistic. It feels something. And the sheriff had called my aunt and told her that there were no skid marks because I drove the road. It was absolutely fine. There was no ice, no snow, no nothing. So that was bullshit. So they said there were no skid marks at all. It didn't make any sense.
and was part of the accident blamed on the weather?
Yes.
Despite, oh my,
Yep. It was
really?
actually blamed on alcohol to begin with because there were Budweiser cans everywhere. And my mom tells me they put this on the news that the teen dies in alcohol related incident. I'm like, what the heck? So when toxicology and all that stuff come back, he had nothing in his system at all. I asked my mom, where did the Budweiser come from? Because none of us drank Budweiser. Like, where did this come from? And she goes, oh, I bought that and we put it in the trunk and forgot about it. And now I'm like, okay,
Oh,
I
that's
think
sad.
that was to make the accident look like an alcohol related accident. And
That's really sad.
I always felt that something was very wrong there. I never had that feeling again until 2011. And I just know that's my discernment. I just know there was something to do with it, and it was something ritualistic.
I feel so bad, like in this community, whether he was targeted or not, the people that do pass away and their deaths end up being sort of covered up with this narrative, this cover story of that everybody hears. It was an alcohol related death, for example, when you find out there wasn't even any alcohol in his system, but people listening, that's their last takeaway of his memory is like, oh, this guy, got drunk and died. And it's like, how sad if there was an underlying story that just got covered up along with his burial. It's like that secret's with him and he can't share what that is.
Right. And then I had called the news after that. I was like, oh no, you better take that out. They wrote this tiny little redaction on the inside of the paper, and it was like nothing. It was this tiny, like, oh, you made it front page news, but the truth you put in there in tiny little
No
letters.
way. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yep,
What
I
was
saved
the
all those clippings and I gave them to my son. I just sent them to him about a year ago.
oh, how did this impact you as, a mother, as a woman, as a teenager going through all this? Did you fall into depressions, or did you have kind of like this emotional sort of pitfall going through so many just life-changing events all at once?
Yeah, well, okay, so he died. I'm a senior in high school. He dies, and then I finish out high school like a couple months later, and then I have my son 2 weeks later, and then 2 weeks after that, I started nursing school. So I didn't even have, like, all I could think of is I have to make money for my son because now I am a mom and a dad. Like, I have to do what I have to do. So like it was just boom, 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 boom. Well, by the end of nursing school, into a year and a half, my left eye wouldn't quit twitching. Gee, I wonder why. It was twitching, and they're like, you really got to go to the doctor. Like, you can't go to clinicals anymore until you find out what's wrong with you. I'm like, I'm fine. I'm fine. And it was this awful, it was really bad twitch. Like, it was bad. Well, I go to the doctor and they're like, oh yeah, you're just stressed out. Here's some benzos. So that's when they first put me on benzos, and boy, did it ever take all my anxiety away. Like that, my twitch went away, and I felt like I could function perfectly on all these things, all these Western medicine things. So all the stuff was still there, but it was just masked, and it felt good, and I could do all the work that I'm supposed to do and not think about it.
Oh my
Yeah, like
goodness.
I want, like, it's like, no kidding, no wonder. And I think that I really like hit my limit about 21 or 22, around in there is when all the depression, the anxiety, all that stuff just kept rolling. It just kept coming. And then I was like fully on all kinds of Western medicine. Anything that they were going to give me, I was going to take it. And thinking that it was the best thing for me to do because I don't have any problems. Instead of dealing with all that stuff, I just kept going. And then I had another child, and we did all these different things. I met my husband, we got married, all this stuff. So there was a whole lot in there.
Yeah. And, that's the other thing too. Whenever you're like in survival mode your whole life, like, and you don't learn about trauma, you don't learn that what you're going through is called abuse. You're just developing these symptomologies from it, like depression. Maybe there's, illnesses, all kinds of different health issues, as we'll talk about at some point, through what you're doing now with discovering all of that. So much of the illness and disease and emotional damage that is done to us, that we take pills for, a lot of times that root cause is trauma underneath all of that, and so we're just sort of like putting a Band-Aid over it with pills. But like none of us, no matter how much you like or hate school, like education on trauma, on abuse, on learning what narcissism is, like that is just like there's nothing about that in school. We learn about like what is it called? The Pythagorean, theory.
Yeah, right.
This like weird stuff that like we never are going to use again in our life.
Nothing useful.
What a rhombus is, like all this really weird stuff, So to me, like just thinking about, even at my age now, I don't have kids, and like that would change my life. And like, I can't even imagine like just the emotions being an adult going through that, and having security, not being in school, like having a child, like going through that's hard enough as an adult. I can't imagine, like, I didn't even know who I was at like 17, 18. I was just like, and so thinking about going through that and then losing a partner, having to move back into an environment that you didn't feel safe in while you're carrying a child and going through grief, and then having to think about, okay, I have this baby coming, like now I got to make money for it. Like I have to, again, grow up. I have to be a 30-year-old now, even though I'm only 17, 18 years old, 19 years old. And I just can't even imagine like what that whirlwind was. It seems almost like you'd have to just go back to being in survival mode for a while, just to like, I got to be a mom. I got to do this. Like I got to take care of stuff. And then all of a sudden, like whenever you finally have a moment to slow down, all these emotions are just, whoosh, oh my gosh, I'm anxious and I'm depressed. And what is all the stuff that I'm carrying under here right now?
Yeah. I didn't think I had any reasons to be depressed or anxious. I didn't think I had any. I was like, I'm fine. Look what I did. I'm fine. And that was like, what do they call, like minimizing problems. My mom was the best at minimizing. Oh, you're fine. Like I was kidnapped with you at gunpoint. It happened one time. Get over it. Like stuff like that. Do you know how other people live? And that was always very minimizing. She would say, children's services would say, you didn't have enough bruises. You didn't have enough bruises for them to take you. Like, and I would be like, yeah, she's right. Because if abuse was real bad, they would take me. They would definitely take me. That's what I was thinking. Because I thought, man, if children's services take your kids, how bad does it have to be?
Right,
But
exactly.
it's the complete opposite, usually.
Yes. And that's interesting. You said that you just sort of like picked it up and kept going. I think nobody does that better than survivors. We can look at survivors like they're very delicate or like they're victims, but I look at you guys like the opposite. Like you guys can, no matter what comes your way, like you will always figure a way to get through it, even if it's like so damaging to go through and traumatizing. Like nobody does that better than a survivor when they're faced with a million things. Somebody who's gone through abuse knows exactly I just got to get this done. I got to get through it. And you do somehow, even though it's like so overwhelmingly almost impossible to think about the things that you've had to overcome.
Yeah. I like looking back on it. I'm like, holy cow, she was amazing, but that's me. I just don't connect it. I'm like, oh no, that was fine. I did a couple things.
Oh my gosh. One of those events, so young especially, would destabilize, I feel like most, teenagers, and it would be really hard to recover from that. And you're now like, okay, I'm going to go to nursing school and I'm going to overcome this. And like, I got to get through this. I got to keep going. And I have a child now I have to take care of. And man, that's just like incredible. I'm just like sitting here, just taking that in for a moment, because even like I said, at my adult age, like, I don't know what I would do if I had all those things happen at once. Like it would completely shatter me. I can't imagine being so young and having to like figure out how to get through such complex things.
Yes, and I think the point of a lot of it was to shatter me. I think it was the group's point to shatter me and just feed off of my horrible emotions that they created.
Yes, 100%. And so talk about your journey through motherhood, going to nursing school, and then eventually meeting your husband. Like, what were kind of those steps? And I know you said you had another child too.
Yeah, I was in nursing school. I had to move to the ghetto, to the low income housing, and I didn't mind it. It was actually really nice. But I'm going to nursing school, and my other friend who was also going to nursing school is across the hall, and she had kids too. And we were running around out there one night, and I met this guy, which is now my husband, and I'd heard all about him. And I'll tell you how I heard about him, because Mike, my fiance that died in a car accident, his older sister had dated him. And that was the only person, Mike said, that was the only person that ever treated her right. And she needed to be back with him. And I'm like, that's so crazy, because then my husband and I get together. Like, it was just so weird. And my fiance's childhood, that mine doesn't even compare to what his was. Like, mine was a cakewalk compared to theirs. So I mean, there's just horrible trauma on both sides, and I'm glad that got taken care of and left, honestly. But yeah, I met my husband there. I was still in nursing school, and it was the day that my grandpa died. I had his funeral. That night is when I met my husband. So God seems to replace things for me. He replaced Mike with my son Michael. He literally, gave me a baby, and then he takes my grandpa and he literally gives me my husband in the same day. Like, that's only God can only do that.
Oh
Because
my
I couldn't
goodness.
handle. There's no way that I could have handled Mike dying, and then my grandpa, the only man that was ever decent to me my whole life, dying. Like, that was just too
Oh,
much.
yeah, like that's like earth shattering, especially like again, you're young. Like this is all like sequenced one after another. This wasn't just like, spread out through your whole lifetime. You had decades to like heal from one instance, and then this other thing happened, like boom, 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 boom for you. The things that like actually did impact you in a positive way, like are being stripped from you, where all the abuse is always there. Like that never leaves, but all the good things are just like being taken from you. Like how shattering that had to have been.
Yeah, it was. And I just did what I always done, put my head down and
Yeah.
be strong and keep going. And that's all I was ever told. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
So then I meet my husband. We get out of there, and
How old were you when you met him?
18.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, 18. 18, but I was like 30.
Right.
I
At
always
least.
felt older. Like, in all the hippie people, they would always say, "Oh, you just got an old soul. You've just been here before." And they would say, "Oh, your aura, all these different things." Now I'm understanding why. Like, all these years, I'm like, yeah,
You're
they
like
liked my energy. They wanted to suck my energy dry. They liked my stuff.
100%, yes. And they weren't wrong. Like you were an old soul. You literally lived, 10 lives in one by the time you were 18. You had already gone through so much more than most people ever would in an entire lifetime.
Yeah, that's what my aunt used to say. She goes, "There are 40 and 50-year-olds who haven't been through this." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
And so what was meeting your husband like, and how was that for you? Like again, meeting somebody healthy, how were you able to sort of like accept that after all the grief and trauma that you're going through, the abuse? What was it that helped you sort of change that patterning within yourself, and like you really solidified breaking the chain by meeting him and becoming a family with this man?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, he had issues too on his family, just not as
We
deep
all
as
do,
mine.
yeah.
Yeah, not as deep as mine. But I would say, when we met, like, it was day 3, I remember, and he said, "Oh, I love you. I love you." Or it was day 2, he told me that, and I said, "I'm not saying that. I'm not." By day 3, I was saying that. And we were engaged in a few weeks. It wasn't long. I mean, it was just, I
Really?
don't know what it was. God, it was just perfect. But I do know what it was, actually. It was safe. I never had safe before. I never knew what that feeling was. My husband was safe. I couldn't figure out why I was so attracted to him. Oh my God, it's safety. I've never seen that before.
Oh, oh
And
my
he's still
goodness.
that way. He still feels that way.
And obviously, he took you in knowing that you had children and brought you in and made you all
Yeah,
his
I just
family
had
too,
one
which
at
is
that time. I
amazing.
just had
Yeah.
Michael. Yeah, I just had one at that time.
And he brought Michael in and became that same sort of protective, safe figure for him also, which is amazing.
Yeah, yeah, he did. Absolutely. I mean, it did. It worked out how God, I mean, God planned it way better than I did. That's for sure. He made it happen like the way it should be, instead of my stubborn ways that I was thinking.
And so at this point, it seems like your life sort of takes a turn for the better. You're not through the thick of everything at all yet. We haven't even reached 2011, talk about all that. But it seems like you found something to grasp onto that was steady, consistent. It wasn't going anywhere. And it seems like you had sort of this stable foundation now that you could finally have when everything else is chaotic. You have your husband and this family that you can come home to and be safe.
Yeah, there was that was beautiful, but there was so much family problems on both sides, on his side and my side, that they would drag us into. I mean, terrible, like his brother and his wife. And I've always loved children. Like immediately I had 2 nephews and I just loved them to death. And I became a rescuer right away because they were in the middle of a domestic violence situation. I mean, horrible. They would beat the crap out of each other. They went to prison for domestic violence. It was bad. Like, so I was trying to rescue, I repeated my childhood. I was trying to rescue my nephews and go to work and do all these things and be a good mother and be a good wife. And I just couldn't do all that stuff. And then we had my mother on the other side just doing all these terrible things. And then he had his mother and stepdad doing all these terrible things. They just all came in on, they wanted to ruin everything we had, everything.
Oh my goodness. And you mentioned earlier your mother was not only unhappy that you found happiness, but was very envious of your marriage and the fact that you found this stability. How did that show up? Did she?
Oh, she would tell my husband certain things to like get him upset. She knew how to play games with us. She was very involved in getting us mad at each other and things like that. And so with his family, they would do the same thing. Yeah, it was like dissension and discord, and they just couldn't take it. They didn't want any peace, any happiness for us. They wanted us just like them, miserable, hateful, full of demons, literally.
Oh my gosh, that's so unfortunate. It's like as if you haven't already gone through enough. Like, can they at least be supportive of your life outside of the house? Like,
and they would tell us, you're rich. They would tell me and my husband, we are rich. We are rich. And I guess compared to them in poverty, we were rich. We thought we were because we were in poverty. So when we finally made just a little bit of money, and I mean like upper, lower income, we thought that was rich. We're like, yay. But they were like, you owe us, you owe us. So we would pay people's electric bills and kids' shoes, and we would do all this for everybody. And then his parents, and then my mom would try to suck us dry. So financially, all these people were leeching off us. And then they would say, well, you're rich. You got a good job. You got a good job. And we'd be like, yeah, we do. Like we were indebted to these people for life.
Yeah. That's wild.
It is, yeah.
Especially that you and your husband sort of had very similar dramatic family issues that were being poured into your marriage. Both sides of the family seems like their problems. They're like, oh, here's some stability. Let's leech in. And like you said, with the order, let's take all this good energy and dump all of our trash on that.
Yeah, that's what it was. And then my husband's stepfather, he was very, very high up into the occult. He's very Masonic, and he was into all kinds of chemistry and different things, making things, and he would always say, I dismissed it all. When they would say, I'm a Mason, or he would say, I'm an alchemist. And I'd say, what is that? And he'd say, well, I turn everything into gold. And I'm like, oh, whatever. Like I never paid attention to what any of this stuff was. They were so heavily involved in it. I just didn't really care or know what it was.
Oh my goodness. Has your husband sort of noticed that too since he's been with you? Has he been able to look at his life and be like, whoa, like my family was into some really dark stuff?
Yeah, he has been able to do that the last 15 years. Definitely.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, because we didn't find out till obituaries. When we're reading the obituary, I'm like, what? Reading all this stuff. I'm like, no way. And I'm like, oh, things are making sense. He never went to work, but yet he was in a union. Because they're all in the union around here, but they don't go to work.
And then having the Freemason ties as well over on.
Yeah, they're all that. And yes, they're all in the union, and they all got the Freemason ties, and they'd never really work. They just do their things.
And so talk about sort of the evolution of your marriage and like leading up to 2011. And we can get a little bit into, some of the stuff that happened then, because that was like really intense year.
Well, yeah, here's some good ones too. So probably about 2005. So this was a couple years after we've been married and we had a child. So we had two at that time. I was just doing all the things, working overtime, working hard, making money, blah blah blah, all the stuff. And my things were just catching up to me. My trauma was just right behind me on my heels, and I just would not acknowledge it at all. I just, well, the only thing I need to do that is take more pills or go to the doctor and get this and get on some pills. I thought that was the answer to everything. And my stepfather, or my father-in-law, my husband's, the Masonic dude. So in 2005, he was telling us about this drug, and I wanted to try it. So the first time that I ever try anything with a needle, it's from him. He gives it to us. I overdose, like overdose 911. It's bad. Like I died. I totally died there, and it was just thinking, that's when it all that's when it all hit me. And then a couple months later, that's when I went to rehab for the first time. And I was like, okay, maybe I have some kind of problem or with something. Because
Mm.
I didn't even realize that I had anything going on, because Western medicine taught me to do this. They taught me to stack all these pills. They taught me to do this stuff. And then when I was thinking of needles, and this is how evil the enemy can be, I was like, I do this every day. So what's the difference with me doing it to myself? I do it every day to people. Like, yeah, that's the enemy right in there telling you some nasty stuff. But yeah, that was the first time I did that. Then I went to rehab, and kind of found out like a little bit about myself, but still I really didn't care. I was still hooked on Western medicine. I'm like, I still need all that. Everybody's got to live on that. So and then I went back again in 2007. That was my last trip to rehab. But I would say that it didn't help. It really didn't help. It kind of brought up a lot of problems that nothing ever got solved, pretty much.
And so talk a little bit too about, rehab and you trying to sort of undo so many layers of the side effects of trauma, addiction being one of them. Healthy, happy people who grew up being loved and safe, those are rarely the type of people who, find themselves entrenched in addiction. And you had a mother and, a stepfather and other men, obviously, who were coming in, not only doing drugs, but inviting you as a child, 13 years old, you're still a child, to come do drugs with them. So like this was like ingrained in you, like substance abuse was just something like very normalized with you, that like you didn't even have to hide from your own mom. She did it with you. So
Yeah.
how did you like reverse engineer that in your life to where you started to be like, this isn't like something I want to do. Like, I want to improve this part of myself. I realize that this is something unhealthy.
Well, I would say about 2007, the first time that I went to treatment, I was like, I don't really have a problem. I don't really have one, but I'm here just because. So
Yeah.
then the second time I was like, all right, I got a problem. There's something, I can't control this at all. So I get out of there. I did like 30 days in there, and we moved a whole hour away. We tried to run away from all of these people, our family. And then my mom comes with us because she says that I owe her what she had told me my whole life. I owe her. I owe her for just existing, for her birthing me. I owe her. So she said she was going to have to live with us for a while. And this is how much control that my mother had on me. I would listen to nobody else in this world. This woman could tell me to do anything and I would do it. Like it, she had so much control over me. She had programmed me my whole life. She was my handler, literally. So we were just trying to get away from our family, moves an hour away from them and all this stuff. And they would just come over sporadically and do weird stuff. But we thought we got away from them. But we didn't. We were still like just living. We didn't know how to live without these people and this chaos and all this stuff. So we stayed away from my mom for like a year. And that's getting pretty close to 2011, because back in that, when I told you that my stepfather gave me the drugs that I overdosed on in 2011, when they were drugging me, literally, I heard him say I should have let her die in 2000. I should have let her die when she overdosed, because he did save me. And I believe that it was all intentional, all of it. I think they tried to kill me July 7th of 2005. I think they tried to kill me then, and it didn't work. And I mean, he mentions it again in 2011. And all through that time, I was none the wiser. I didn't have any discernment at that time at all.
Yeah. Was your
And I'm
husband
thinking
also
of,
like going through his own reverse engineering of his life at the time that you were beginning to unpeel these layers and heal? Was he kind of going through that process with you?
a little bit, but then like our families, my mom would drag me into stuff, and then his family would drag him into stuff. Anytime we would get a step ahead, they would make sure that we would take a couple steps back. They would just force it on us.
Right.
And then deal with all their problems, deal with all this and my nephews, all these different things. Just having my energy go everywhere but myself.
And I know true healing for you began after 2011, which we're going to talk about now. But it's amazing that, again, like, you're so young, you've gone through all this stuff, like, in so many years, you've had all these different events happen, and like, you finally, it's interesting seeing like your path of like peeling away these different layers of your trauma and being like, okay, this is a problem that I have. This is a problem that I have. I want to heal this. I want to get better at this. I'm going to do this, and then all of a sudden, you're on sort of this quest, and bam, 2011 comes, and, it's just this utter chaos. And I'd love for you to dive into that now if you want.
So I was pregnant in 2000. Well, I went back to school because of all things, what I was going to do, and I can't believe myself, I was going to be a legal drug dealer. I was going to go work for a big farm and deal drugs to doctors because I'm like, they make a lot of money. That's all I cared about was the money. I was like, they make a lot of money. So I went back to school. And then when I graduated, I was a month pregnant. So I started over with that. And I got really, really sick with my pregnancy, very, very ill. So they told me that she didn't make it several times. They didn't think I was going to make it. They definitely didn't think the baby was going to make it. So I was extremely high risk. So I go to have her, and the only person that we have to watch our two older children is my mother. So she's there while I'm at the hospital, getting all these problems taken care of. And my son calls me and he said, Mama is being mean. And at this time I didn't know anything at all. He said, Mama is being mean and she's moving everything around. And she would do that. She was so crazy and manipulative. She would dig in your house, literally. She could, everything that you have that's private, she knew where it was. Like, she was that kind of a person. I think that was her job in the cult, honestly. She's a finder of information, is what I used to say. Finder of information. So I thought that was upsetting that he was calling during labor, and I'm like, this is the only person I have that can watch these kids, and I'm like, what is going to go on? So that kind of got slid under the rug. We had our baby and all that stuff, and she was fine and healthy, praise the Lord. And when I get home from labor, my mom had changed my entire house around, everything, my bedroom, my living room, everything. She changed my whole house around. I'm like, what the hell? But this is the weird stuff that she did. So I was like, that's odd. So our daughter's probably about 8 weeks old. We have all these problems with her. She just had tons of problems. So I'm trying to fix them and all that stuff. And we had two children that stayed with us often along with our kids, and they started telling me some things, and I was like, what? Well, that doesn't sit right. Like, first of all, a 7-year-old just come up and said, oh, we were humping. And I said, wait, what are you talking about? Like, wait a second. So that's where that word took everything. I heard that word, and that was a key to be like, wait, what a second, what? So then these kids started telling me this stuff. So this went on for like a day or two, and then I'm like, what do I do? Because I didn't, my training tells me, go to the authorities, go to the authorities, go to the authorities. That's all it tells me. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. So what do I do? But I call my mother. Call my mother because she was the only person that I have. So she comes right over there, which she turns out to be the predator the whole time. So I'm calling the person that's harming these children right there. Right there. And the kids were saying, if we tell, they're going to hurt you. We're going to get taken away. All these things and all this stuff. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. All this stuff. Well, it all happened. Everything that they told me, it came into fruition. It sure did. And like I said, I called the abuser right over there, but I didn't know it. So, for like a whole week, these kids are telling me different things and all this stuff. And I'm telling my mom, I said, I don't want a paper trail. I'm going to tell you that right now. I had a plan and it had nothing to do with authorities. I could tell you that. So she's like, no, you can't do that. You got to do this the right way if we want to do this. So she talked me into going to the authority. She talked me into going to her people, pretty much. That's what she did. So that's what I did. I went to them, told them all the things, all that stuff. And that's when they were telling me, they're like, this is really hard to prove and all this stuff. I said, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I'm going, this is truth and blah, blah, blah. They were trying to tell me at the authorities that this was not going to work out for me, but I wasn't hearing it. I was just in like survival shock. I'm going to murder everyone mode, literally. Because that's what I was going to do. Because all these kids were telling me some crazy things. And they were also like showing me where they were downtown, and I was going there. So I was seeing them with my own eyes. And I was literally kicking doors down with a gun. I was on a rampage. And the authorities let me do it too, by the way. They let me do it for a couple weeks. Well, when all this was going on, that's when I started noticing that stuff wasn't right. My husband's home, I'm home. I could notice that stuff wasn't right with me. Like I'm forgetting stuff, like time is going weird. And like I'm waking up and that's not where I was sitting. Like, what is going on here? So I knew that something was going on. And I could not figure it out. So we went to the store. I had bought these digital recorders. I bought two of these small digital recorders because this was 2011. There was only flip phones then. And I knew it kept getting worse, that I didn't know what was going on, but something kept getting worse. And I kept thinking, man, all the drugs that I've taken in my life, I always joked and said nobody could roofie me because because my body could handle it, and I would probably like it. Nobody's going to roofie me. So I kept thinking in my head, what could be this drug? What is this drug that someone's giving me, and how are they giving it to me? So I put the recorders in, and on those recorders, you can hear sprays. I was being sprayed with some kind of gas. It would smell sickening sweet too. But you can hear them on there. You can hear them spray, and then you hear my voice go, rah, 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 like it's creepy as hell. So there's where my time was going. So like as this is going on, I'm doing all these things. I'm recording this stuff. And eventually Easter takes place. So that would be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I call that Demon Day because that is the day I met God. I truly met God that day. And this is so screwed up. We're still all thinking that it's only these certain people that these kids pointed the finger at. Just this couple that the kids pointed the finger at. And I'm like, okay. Well, as it goes on, there's more and more and more. So my mom is staying with us at our house. We live out in the country. We live out in Amish country. We're 10 miles from any city. Like nothing's out there. We're totally alone out there. So she's staying with us. She says that she has to leave to go home. And I said, where is all that blood coming from? Because there was blood. I'm like, what happened? She goes, oh, I just cut my finger. She had wiped it in my son's room, wiped it in this weird shape in his room. And I was like, what the hell? But I was being drugged. So it was like, it was fuzzy and all this stuff. And then I go down to my bathroom and there's fingerprints of blood all over the ceiling and on the mirror. That's when spiritually things got out, like went out of control. I don't know what that woman did. She walked out that door, and that's the first time I realized that God is real, demons are real, the devil's real, and spirits are real. It all came and it was attacking all of us. Every single one of us, all four of us. Well, even the baby, all five of us. And it was absolutely terrifying. I had a Bible laying around. I didn't use it, but I had it laying around, and I'm like, I don't know. People like do this when this stuff happens. So I was reading the Bible. I could feel that they wanted my infant because she was only 6 weeks old. They wanted that girl. They wanted that baby, and I was just absolutely terrified. We were all terrified, all of us, and all of us can recount different things that happened spiritually that aren't physical, that normal people wouldn't see. And then I'm thinking, I must be crazy. But how can I be crazy when we're all seeing this? This is not a hallucination. This is not a delusion. We're all seeing and experiencing these things. So it has to be real. But I'd never experienced anything like that before. So this goes on all day. Like I was doing serious spiritual battle. I didn't even know what I was doing. I was screaming things out of the Bible. I mean, I was literally being choked, thrown on the ground, scratched, like by things that weren't physically there. So this goes on for like 8 hours. My husband was in the throw. He didn't know what to do. And that was another thing. They were screwing with our vehicles so bad. We had turned our vehicles into the mechanic so many times because we would come out in the morning and the spark plugs would be ruined or the brakes would be cut. There would be all this stuff happening to our vehicles. So our vehicle was constantly at the mechanic and we're out in the middle of nowhere. So they just have us stranded. So my husband takes off walking. He was like, I took the baby and I took off walking down our road. And here comes my mom. As soon as he takes off walking with the baby to go get the car. When she come in that house, every spiritual thing stopped like that. It went over as soon as she got in there. It was gone. It was so crazy. And that's when I found the Lord. That those 8 hours was when I found the true spirit of Christ right there. And when I called on him, and it worked. It worked. And we decided we were terrified to be at the house. I mean, petrified to be there. None of us wanted to be there. Doors were slamming. We had weird bugs. We had weird animals. We had all kinds of weird stuff. No one wanted to stay there at all. So this would have been technically Holy Thursday, like a Christian holiday. So, and also the occult holiday too. These are all very high holidays in their thing that they do. So we go to her house. And it proceeds to get worse. This is when I take the tape recorders because I know I'm being drugged even worse here. And that's where I have most of my evidence on those recorders of the things they were doing rituals to us while I was passed out. Like satanic rituals. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Even there was one time she pulls the recorder out of my bra and laughs and puts it down. And I had a second one. And they never thought that we would keep those or get to use them or anything like that. I know that much. But we went there those days. It was hell at her house for those 4 days. We finally got out from everything on Easter. On that Easter, my husband and I get arrested. We both get arrested, and my children go to my aunt. Thank God. So we get out in 3 days. No one was believing us. No, but they said no one was believing what we were saying, of course, because it does sound crazy. And I'm like, I'm not on drugs. I swear to you, drug test me. Take my hair, do it all, do it all. So they're like, you're on drugs. I'm like, I will take an everything test. Do it, do it. I would not get a test. They took our kids on the grounds of drugs that don't show up in drug screens, which I don't know how you can legally take somebody's children for when they're offering their blood and their hair. I don't know how that's possible, but it was possible. So my aunt technically had custody for a little while. They removed the kids for 36 days. We didn't have access to our children for 36 days. They said my aunt lied. All of this stuff was a bunch of garbage. They said that I needed a psychological evaluation because my mom told them that I was schizophrenic and I was off my medications. That's why I was acting this way. That's why I was talking about trafficking and human trafficking and child pornography and things like that. So that's how they took our kids on those two grounds that were completely false, completely false. So they told us I needed a mental health evaluation. I said, fine. I got one done right in the first couple days. So did my husband. They made me get 4 of those suckers, 4. And it took 36 days to even get our kids back in custody, which I hear is a miracle. I hear that doesn't even happen. Like what we did, that was a miracle from God that we even got them back. Because it doesn't happen. But we still had to continue to do their bullshit for 9 months. 9 months until we had full custody. And they told us we were not allowed to talk about any of this or they would take our children again. They did. And I didn't. I didn't talk about it. I didn't say a damn word. I'll tell you that.
Oh my gosh. I mean, just talk about like getting hit by a train all of a sudden, and it's at a time too when you're finally thinking, okay, I can slow down just a little bit. I have all this chaos happening for my husband's family and my family, but I can find time to go to rehab. I'm going to try to sort of dig into these traumas that I have and start, creating a family and healing. Then all of a sudden, boom, you're just hit out of the blue and it's just one thing after another, not just impacting you and your husband, but all the way down to your children now are being impacted by the abuse of your mother and others in the family that you had nothing to do with. You were just trying to do the right thing and report it.
Yeah. Every fear, my deepest fears, they all happened. They all happened. Yes. Every single one of them. They did.
Yeah, I hear that often. It's like as bad as abuse is to experience personally, no parent that I've ever met that's, gone through abuse, they always say, I'd rather it be me than my child. Like there's no trauma or like abuse to me worse than my children being abused, or harmed or not safe. And like, I can't imagine having that tight family unit. And then all of a sudden for, over a month, you have 0 contact with them.
Yeah, it was, we had a little bit of supervised visits at a facility. It was just horrible and awful.
Oh my gosh.
It was just, I just couldn't believe it. And I couldn't believe after everything that I've been through and how many times you've been called and you never took me, but you took my children. Like, are you kidding? But it happens every day, happens all the time.
What a
and my mother she was just behind the whole, absolutely everything. She was just behind all of it.
And there were miracles, however, that came about after this that did not transpire beforehand, even though you didn't really have the time to work on yourself before all this happened. It wasn't, fair on your end. However, afterwards, it seems like there was sort of this divine intervention that ended up, you went from being spiritually attacked from the dark side during all of this and chaos and separation and unknown and fear, trauma compiled on top of trauma. And then all of a sudden it was like this calm sort of came over a little bit and healing truly began in your life and for your family. Do you want to talk about that aspect of it and how you got through the other side of this?
Yeah, and I will say too, all the times that I went to rehab, that all got used against me. My mom, while I was in jail
Oh,
for those 3 days, my mom brought the authorities inside my house in my file cabinet and gave them, she loaded them up with information to fire on me. Everything from my rehab they had, which is illegal, by the way, but they don't care. It doesn't matter. But yeah, they used every single thing against me, used every single, oh, so you're a drug addict. You went to rehab, didn't you? That's what this is about. You're on drugs.
it's like, yeah,
I'm like,
you want to know where that started from? My mom. Like,
right. And yeah, and that's how the court, that's how,
yes,
unfortunately, that's how they work. It's a sick Masonic
100%.
system.
100%. When, in my opinion, after hearing so many survivor testimonies, to me, addiction is a red flag of abuse. You know, you rarely hear of somebody having an addiction issue with anything without the underlying foundation of that being abuse of what happened in the first place. So for me, it's like the fact that they would hold that against you and not be like, wow, she went through some really hard things and she's trying to get through it. Like she went to rehab, meaning she's trying to get better. Instead, it's like, oh, you went to rehab. That means that you were doing drugs at some point. It's like, are you kidding? How can you
Yeah.
use that against somebody that's going there to like do good for themselves? You know, it's terrible.
Yeah. Oh, they certainly spin it. Yeah, being honest is probably the worst thing you can do. It really is. It's like, oh, well, I had evidence and proof and all this stuff. It doesn't even matter. I
Totally.
will say when my kids were gone, and I just talked to my son about this, when my kids were gone for those days, he said, he goes, if I they did tell me, like the authorities told me they were keeping them together because I was just petrified. I had a 6-week-old baby who was
Oh,
breastfed and also like they jerked this child off my breast. You know, like this is unreal. But I was afraid they were going to split them up. I don't know. I'd never had any foster care experience or nothing. But praise the Lord, they kept them together in one house. And this is crazy. Like my son said, he just said yesterday, he said, if I seen those people today, I would give them a hug and handshake because they treated us very well. And I'm like,
oh,
well, praise the Lord,
thank
thank God.
God.
And then this is the best part of it all. So at that time, well, when they were with them for those 36 days, they had kept going to this church, which I really didn't like, but they kept going to this church and the kids were telling me about it. And I'm like, okay, okay. Well, all these years later, while I'm in co-op for homeschool, that's the church we go to for co-op. So I'm like, full circle came back around 15 years ago.
That's
Yeah. So I'm like,
wild.
yeah, you took my children and then you had them there. And now, I mean, look what God has done. Look what he did. Full circle again.
Wow. And let's talk about some of the other miracles that God performed because it was profound. I mean, just the fact that you're like still again here today, like not just from what you went through from childhood, but that experience in 2011, like, oh my gosh, that would have had, you know, an impact on a lot of families. It could have caused a divorce. It could have caused the kids to have, you know, been gone and out of their care for
Forever. Yeah,
forever.
I'm so blessed. I can't even, when I hear people's stories on here of their children being taken, it's years and it's just, it's heart wrenching. I know what they're feeling. I can't even imagine. It's
And
the
it's such
worst
a
thing you can do
blessing.
to a mother. It is the worst
Yes.
thing you can do. And
Yes.
they like to do it.
Yes.
But yeah, I've had literally so many miracles. Like right on Demon Day. That's 4/11/11. I remember it. It's seared into my mind. Demon Day. That's when I got saved, and immediately there was never a craving for drugs ever again. It was gone. I mean, prescription drugs that I'm trying to get off, prescription drugs that help you get off drugs that I had been on for years, like as maintenance, gone. It was gone in an instant. Everything. No more cravings. No more nothing. It was just gone. God just took it. He took it. After all that hard work and rehab and it didn't work and all that stuff, God just took it in the snap of a finger.
Was there like a moment, like were you praying and it happened, or like how did that
Yeah,
come
we were.
about?
Yeah, this
Yeah.
like when that spiritual warfare first started, when I literally screamed out for Christ, because I was like, there's no human help left. Like, there's nothing left for me. I just screamed out for God and Jesus. That's all I knew. I was like, well, I'm going to try this. And they answered. They answered. They came. They did. And they haven't left since.
How did this, like, how did you get through this as a family? And like, what was that like getting your kids back too? And how did that change? How did this whole thing change your family unit?
Oh, it changed everything because we were like real laid back, loose hippie family, all this stuff. Like the next thing you know, all of us love Jesus like this. All of us are Jesus freaks in 5 seconds. And everybody's like, what could have happened? Because I'm like, Jesus, Jesus. Even my husband's like, Jesus, Jesus. And everybody's like, they've lost their mind. And we like let go. And because the hippie scene, all that stuff is indoctrination. It's indoctrination in a different form. And it's not great. You never need to make anything your idol. And we certainly made that lifestyle our idol. And a lot comes with that. That was immediately gone. We were done with all that, done with all the music, done with everything. We found church and we started seeing Jesus a lot. And so I can also say, because my kids are like, that was a lot of church. I was so petrified of doing something wrong. Like, I was so petrified of doing occult things because I didn't know that I was doing them before. I was so petrified of doing that and offending God and not knowing that I was being occult or doing occult things. But that was a lot of my trauma too.
Totally. Yes. And for you were on all this medication. Like your treatment was very Western, and it was unbeknownst to you. It wasn't that you were doing that on purpose. That's just what we learned growing up. Like, you go to the doctor and you get pills, Talk about your transition going from that to holistic health, somatics, and these other different ways that you somehow discovered. I want to hear your journey, how you went from this to that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, apparently I do that. It seems I switch a lot. Or if I do, it's really big. It's like, oh.
It's great. I wish more people would, make that switch.
Well, my aunt owned an in-home healthcare agency, so I literally knew Western medicine from the day I was born. Like, I knew everything about it. I was just indoctrinated into it, and I believe that was the only way. So after we heal as a family and things are really good and we find the Lord, and our God just made our life. I mean, he built it brick by brick. He just kept blessing us. He's never stopped either, and he's not going to. He just throws us out stuff. He just blesses us all the time, and that's what he did those years. But during that time, I was doing all the mom and the wife things and all that, but my health was going down the tubes. And it really was the major reason, because I was not acknowledging and processing any of this back stuff. I just kept going. I wasn't going to look at that anymore. God healed it, but it really was still there. I still needed to heal that. So my physical body was suffering with it. And I went 2.5 years being wrongfully diagnosed with all this different stuff. I get to this really good doctor, and I had tumors on my spine. He was so mad. Yeah, he's like, they knew what was happening. I was almost paralyzed. So he does an emergency surgery, and that fixes that part. And then 1.5 years later, I had another emergency back surgery where like my whole back is rebuilt, and it's phenomenal. But after that, I was like, I can't. I'd had 5 emergency surgeries in 6 years. So I was like, I'm not doing this. I can't. My internal organs were just exploding, literally. Appendix, gallbladder, everything was just exploding. It was rupturing. So I was like, I got to figure out a different way to this. So I just started researching and stuff like that. I was always kind of drawn to holistic things anyway, like natural stuff. But I really didn't think it worked. I was like, that doesn't work. It's no comparison to Western medicine. Then I started going to a chiropractor and a massage therapist. And then I just started learning, and I started learning about herbs, and I lost 148 pounds. Well, I lost 148 pounds. I've kept it off for 6 years.
How much did you weigh at your heaviest?
265.
And how tall are you?
5'1". I'm short.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I was going to say, even just 5 extra pounds on a small frame like that can be a lot. Oh my goodness. That's amazing.
And I felt like too, that was trauma. Like, that was so much trauma on me. And I literally, as I lost weight, I lost trauma too. Like, I was processing feelings, because it does get stuck in the fat cells. I mean, there's memories in there. So it's like, as I was doing it, stuff was just recalling, like tons of stuff from my childhood, recalling and remembering things and really processing things with the weight loss. It really helped. It changed a lot. Like, I was getting it out of my body. And that's when I realized, like, all these physical ailments that I had, they're all from my abuse. They're from my physical abuse and all the other things. Oh, my womb, that's another thing. I had terrible polycystic ovarian syndrome. I had cysts everywhere. My skin was full of cysts. I did everything to fix it. Nothing would work. God literally healed that after all this medicinal stuff and herbs. When I go back, nothing. My uterus is fine. Everything is beautiful. They never even seen it like that before.
What was kind of like the concoction of what you were doing? Because you had stopped going to traditional therapy because it was just sort of like repeating the cycle for you. It wasn't healing anything. It was just like, you're paying to not be treated, basically.
Yeah.
What did you replace that with? Were you doing some other type of therapy where you were
No, I
processing
actually
emotions?
haven't done like therapy since 2011. No,
Yeah.
it was just God. It was God. I mean, the last 15 years, he just sent me on a seek and find mission. It was just he would just tell me things. I would go research it and just he would just keep it going like he does now. I mean, it was just me and God. I was like, here we go. I'm a Jesus freak now. I'm a Bible thumping Jesus freak, all the things I made fun of, and here I am.
And what set you on a quest? Because you ended up becoming somebody who could provide holistic care to patients. Talk
Yeah.
about your journey. Like, how did you end up going from, you were going to go to nursing school again? Like, you see your path, like you've always had a fascination in like health and healing, but it's always been like on the Western side. How did
Yeah.
that flip happen? Like, what made you want to pursue this professionally?
Yeah, after they did all the stuff to me in for 2.5 years, wrongfully diagnosing me, and I'm believing all this stuff, and I'm doing all these things and all this stuff, I was like, this is bull. I am never participating in this again, literally. So I had that emergency back surgery, and then I had to take over a position because one of my aunts died in the company. I wasn't going back to Western medicine. I got put right back in it. I was like, oh man, here I go again. So then I'm going to school to be a holistic practitioner, and then my favorite aunt who owned the company, she passes away unexpectedly. So then I was held with the nursing agency, and I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to ever do this anymore. So that's where the split really happened. It was forced pretty much. And then we were supposed to go in business together and do this holistic thing together, but then she died. So that's how I got into it.
Oh my goodness. And so what was your path to, like, how did you decide to get more into like the nutrition side, and kind of how did you incorporate that into your own life? What were you doing with yourself holistically? Was it herbs, and like how did you incorporate all of that to help heal your own body?
Yeah, herbs, absolutely. Food and nutrition is so important. Food and water are so important, and people think that you can just drink any kind of bottled water or drink out of your faucet. It's really not true. You don't need as much water as they say. You need quality, small amounts of very good water to hydrate you. And that's a huge start because we don't do that. And the food is horrible and it's poisoning all of us. It was poisoning me. That's why I had to change what I was eating and when I was eating it and just everything. And that's how I was like, nutrition is what healed me. It healed all my ailments, healed my skin up, healed my autoimmune diseases. It was really food consistency over time. And it's a whole lifestyle change too. It's not like, oh, eat these 3 things and you're going to be fine. It's real food. It's just whole food. Proteins, real fruits and vegetables, organic. Try
Oh
to
my
grow them
goodness.
yourself. Like it's bad out there in the food sector.
Well, and like whenever you and I grew up, going back to the slap bracelet days, cereal was touted, Lucky Charms and, just all these sugary cereals were like the foundation of the food pyramid, and like just what we ate. We ate so much like artificial colors and flavors and dyes and chemicals. And like our parents didn't know, my parents didn't have money either. Like and they had 4 kids. So it's like, we're just eating cereal like all day, every day. And like these, hamburger helper and just all these different foods. And I think too, like when you're going through trauma and like you're eating that way too, like it processes in your body different than like a healthy child would, who might not have the high cortisol and like the different, things that come with trauma or living in survival mode, fight or flight, and adrenaline growing off all the time. And, it's fascinating to see somebody like you who grew up with a totally different, background, like all the different ways that you have been breaking cycles for your family, not just from the trauma, but the way that you now deal with medicine, knowing when Western medicine's appropriate, when you can treat things holistically and don't need a doctor, and then relying on the earth for food instead of, all the processed stuff that you grew up on. I think that's just amazing that you have just come that full circle, lost all this weight. Like you are radiant, like your skin, like
Well, thank you.
beautiful
It's probably
complexion.
the lighting.
You have very good lighting too, but you're just like so youthful and you just seem like so light now. And like
That's
I'm
how I
listening
feel.
to
Like
like,
I've been delivered from so many things. I've been delivered from it. Like there were
and you
spirits
can
in my
see
body.
it.
They were gone.
Yes, like your spirit just looks like so light, and I'm sure that it's not always like that. I'm sure like healing's a lifelong journey. There's always stuff to work on, but hearing all this heaviness and this darkness and like you are just like glowing and like you have this beautiful aura around you and like this confidence and these boundaries now and you're fierce. And I'm like, man, it's so hard to imagine you being vulnerable in any type of way because your transformation is just immensely incredible how you flipped everything around.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it literally like, yeah, and the starting with food and water, it's like love of self and love self-care. And never did I learn that at all. And like it's not about just shoveling food in your mouth. It's literally about nourishing your body. What's going to heal your soul today? What tastes good? You know, what's real? What food is real? And it fixes everything. It does, and your brain becomes clear. You get the candida out, you get parasites out, get these things out, and you can actually think. You can look around and be like, what is going on around here? It's crazy. Because I think we're
100%.
all so like literally doped up on food and stuff. It's a drug. Like, I mean, it is a drug. You get a physical withdrawal from processed food. So, I mean, I think people are just so cloudy. All they can think of is work. Got to go to work, especially like the lower middle class. Like, got to go to work, got to do this. And they'll never pay attention on what's in that meat or what's in this. They don't care. They just have to, do the basics. We're slaves in bondage.
Yes. And, to sort of combine that with trauma, also, I've heard multiple times, too many times than I can actually count, actually, not just on my podcast, but from people who reach out who have also suffered from different types of disordered eating, whether it was just like always eating junk food or eating too much or eating too little or going through, restrictive eating disorders like anorexia and things like that. And you see how trauma, again, is an underlying cause to all of that, and how even eating unhealthy, like eating is like we get addicted to food just like you would a drug or a pill, and it becomes a coping mechanism. It's comforting when you're going through trauma. And I think it's such a good thing to remind survivors that like that's a coping mechanism. It's not actually helping you through your journey. It could be making it worse by always relying on junk food and things that are unhealthy for you. And then on the contrary, I've heard a lot of people talk about how they gained weight, especially females. I've heard this from, that they started eating bad because they thought, okay, I'm being molested, I'm being abused. Maybe if I'm fat and I don't look like this pretty girl that I was, that nobody will touch me anymore. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, the ways that like these, trauma distorts our mind and how accessible things like food are to like be that cure for that like if I just start eating a lot and I get fat, I'm not going to be abused. And it's like, oh my goodness. And so then we're looking at this person like they have, that they're just eating too much again, and like not asking like what would make a person go from being skinny and maybe athletic to very, obese and like eating junk food all the time. That doesn't seem right. There's something that happened to cause that change, and you can sort of see how that impacted your life, maybe not in those same contexts, but like, it seems like food was like a big comfort for you and something
I think it was my first addiction was food. I think that was the first one. I remember the first time I binge ate. I binge ate bananas when I was 7 years old because my mom's boyfriend, that new guy that she met, was coming to take me with him. I didn't want to go with him. And I was like 6 or 7. I remember I ate all the banana and I puked. When he got me to wherever we were going, I puked everywhere. I mean, it worked. Nothing happened to me that day, but I remember that was binge eating right there. That was my coping skill right there.
And you hear that so many times. And like, it really is like, you look at nutrition as just like a baseline, and how much just that, without anything else, somebody just starts there, and it's not that hard to do. Yes, some healthy food does cost more. Yes, organic food does tend to have a higher price tag, which is really sad, but when you think about like the investments of like, you had tumors on your back, like how much would like chemotherapy, if that was cancerous, and like all these different treatments, that would have been so much money that you would have had to pay. And so it's like you end up saving money in the long run by making these investments that are healthy for you right now in the present.
That is so very true. That's why I don't mind spending money on the food, because it's nourishing us and it's actually healthy and we're not eating this junk.
Yes. Where would you recommend being somebody who went from, more of an overweight type person with a typical American diet to somebody more holistic, eating organic? How did you start that? Because that can be intimidating for somebody to be like, how do I just go from eating junk food to now I'm eating organic fruits and vegetables and like meat, and like that's so different than what I eat? How can somebody stair step into that, and what changes would you recommend for maybe other survivors who are struggling?
It's a journey, of course. It's not a race, it's a journey. And I would always suggest here in America to get rid of your wheat. If you just cut the wheat out, that's the first thing that's going to help you, because I promise you it's hurting you, and it's not wheat. It's the other stuff in the wheat. It's the seed itself. It's horrible. And it's going to blow us up. It's going to put marks on our skin and mess up our internal organs. It's designed to do that. That I would say take the wheat out first and foremost, and get some Celtic sea salt and put it in every drink that you have. Every drink that you drink through the day, sprinkle some in there. Start remineralizing, because we're all under mineralized. That's pretty much the problem. And those things help that. But I think that's a good start, because taking wheat away is a big deal. Like, people love their carbs. They love their, their breads and their buns and biscuits and all that
Totally.
stuff, the noodles and things. If you just cut that out for a week or two, see how you feel. You're going to feel a lot better. And you're going
That's
to
a good
drop some
point.
weight.
Yeah, and wheat especially, it's like in everything, especially with like happy and like celebrations, like cake, cookies, desserts, that's always like something that you treat yourself to when you're celebrating something. And then it's always like when you go out to like a nice restaurant, they give you bread to start your dinner. And so it's so hard to avoid breads and grains, but I agree. I
Yes.
think that's like they put that, like I said, at the foundation of our food pyramid for so long. It's been, grains. And it's like, man, like what, there's probably a reason why the government chose that. And it's probably not for our health that they made
No.
that the biggest food category.
No. Wild. I know that I think they changed it a little bit. I don't look at it, but just whole foods, real foods. If it's got more than 3 ingredients in it, it's junk. Throw it out. Like, if you get cottage cheese or sour cream, it just needs 2 ingredients in it. That's it. Like, it doesn't need all this stuff. And we don't need to eat 3 times a day and all these snacks in there. We don't have to do that. That's been a fallacy too. That's how we've gained all the weight. We don't need all this extra energy.
100%. What about for you? And I'm just asking this because I'm curious. I think there'll be some people who would also be curious to learn a little bit more from you. What type of, everybody's different. So there's going to be different, things that everybody needs. But just from your own perspective, what herbs have made a difference in your life that you take? And what like supplements and things like that have you sort of been leaning on to maintain your health?
I take an array of herbs, and I like loose herbs. So I'll take loose herbs and I'll make my own concoction and make a whole pot of it for the day, and then I'll drink it. So I'm sitting here through the day drinking my medicinals, literally
Ooh,
drinking my
like a
medicine.
tea.
That's what I do, right? My little cup. I always got it going on in there. And I put like holy basil in there, ashwagandha. Different days require different stuff. Nettle. I have a whole cabinet full of stuff depending on how I feel. Like, I did some ashwagandha and some calming things for this because I was doing the interview. But
Yeah.
like, just how you feel through the day. There is an herb for everything. There really is.
What's the best way if somebody were interested in is at that point where they want to start changing their life for the better, and maybe they're addicted to food or just sick of being overweight? Where's a good place to start? Is there, a resource that you can recommend, or a website, or do you offer services? What's a way that people can, start to get their life on track?
Well, I do offer nutritional services. So I have a nutritional consult on my link page. I think, what's it called? Link?
The link
What is
tree?
it? Link
Link
tree, yeah,
tree,
link
yeah.
tree. Link, yeah, on my link tree, and you can reach out to me there, and I answer questions, and I try. One thing I said is, being a holistic practitioner, I was not going to run this like a doctor's office or like anything else. I was not doing that, and I have not. I have helped people. Just send me messages, and I'll answer your questions for free. God rewards me all the time. I don't need to be paid for all my advice. You know what I mean? Like, God gave it to me freely, so I always offer it. So they can PM me, DM me, anything on any of my pages, and I can answer.
And I'm going to put holistics. I'm going to put that, the link tree for that in the show notes. That way people can go through there, and you even have scheduling that people can do right from here. You have your
Yeah.
different social media sites. So I will link that. That way people have an easy way to connect with you. If people want to work with you professionally, if they want to hire you, is Schedule with Brittany on your link tree? Is that the best way that somebody can reach out professionally for professional help?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great one right there. And the
Okay.
standard process, that is the goal. I mean, that is real supplements. That is the best supplements you can get. And those are only allowed to be prescribed by a practitioner. So you can't get them in the stores or anything like that. They're phenomenal products. They're real food.
I actually want to comment on that because I take my dog to a holistic veterinarian. There's only a couple here in the state that I live in. I have to drive an hour and a half to get him there. However, standard process, I just want to validate what you're saying. That is what I use for my dog to supplement the different issues that and imbalances that he has had in his health and to address those as he grows. And I agree, like all the ingredients are so pure. Like it is a fantastic company from what I've learned from it. And my dog has responded very, very well to it.
Oh, I'm so glad. I know I have a machine that tests, like, will test your hair and test your skin, and then it will tell me what you need for standard process. And they I can do it for animals too. So I've never done animals, but you can send their hair in and I do it. But I do give people a lot of supplements for their animals just in general.
And the veterinarian that I go to, she actually has I don't even know what it's called. I think it's like Quest or something that she's like certified through to do hair things, but she
Yeah.
can do that with animals. She was talking about how she did that with herself. She sent her own hair in and was able to identify a ton of like what minerals she was missing and like her deficiencies, how food was interacting with her body. And I just thought it was incredible. I'm like, oh my gosh, like every single person should be doing that. That's what we should all
Right?
be doing, like individual healthcare, figuring out like exactly what our own bodies need. So that's so neat that you do it.
Yeah, we need to get out of thinking that somebody else knows better. No, your body knows better and you know it. You just got to find the information.
100%. And so this actually brings me to my next question for you. What made you obviously talk on your Holy Holistics page as a practitioner, giving advice and sharing sort of the professional side of what you do. But on your social media, you also share about your abuse and being a survivor and your victimization and your process through healing. What made you want to do that publicly instead of just dealing with it maybe behind the scenes and with your family? Like, why did you want to be this? Why did you want to share it publicly?
Well, I decided, I think there was something about abuse. I made a video on my big Holy Holistics. And then I was like, this doesn't even go. Like, I can't be putting this on my Holy Holistics. And I think that's when I met you. I think of, like, it was like 2 years ago, I think I met you. So then I made another page for Expose the Darkness. In 2024, God just told me, you're going to write a book and you're going to call it Expose the Darkness and expose your darkness. And I was like, okay. So that's what I've been working on ever since. So I made a little TikTok channel for Expose the Darkness. And whenever I'm going through a story or whatever and I'm writing it down, sometimes I'll make a video on it. It helps. It helps me look at it and organize my book and my thoughts and stuff like that. And I don't know what made me do it publicly. I think probably because I've been silenced for so long.
And what's the response been, and like how has this contributed to your healing journey, being vocal about it to complete strangers on the internet?
Oh, I've had people that I know in real life reach out to me and tell me all these different things. They remember a lot of different abuse that my mom did, that they seen, that they witnessed. I've had children that I took care of, that because I was the caregiver through the whole family thing. I was the caregiver of every child, like since I've been 5 years old. It was my duty to care for the children. So I did, and I protected the heck out of them. And I've had 4 of those girls reach out to me over the last year. And that's been my favorite part. And my cousin said, well, it sounds like these are people that don't have a voice and you're giving them a voice. Yes, I am. And I'm going to continue to do so.
Oh my gosh, I love that. How cool. I love seeing the evolution of going from kind of like a victim to a survivor, where you're like,
Yeah.
okay, like I'm completely taking my power back, and like the silence treatment is not going to work anymore. Like I am going to talk about this. I'm not going to have my shame anymore. And it's amazing just, the impact that talking about trauma can have. It's like our most sacred, like secrets that we're never supposed to be told, and the things that we carry the most guilt and shame for, yet they're like the things that connect us most with one another, and like the things that impact somebody the most to hear, more than like our picture perfect, Instagram pages where we're posting ourselves at our best. Like,
yeah,
it's so impactful what you've done. And like, I love how you decided to do this and that you've gotten responses from people about it being impactful to them.
Yes, that's my favorite part. Like I said, especially real life people that went through things. I'm like, yes. And they've all done, I feel like I had a part in raising them. And those girls have done well. Like they have done what I did. They cut their parents off and they started a new life and they've done well with children and husbands. And it's wonderful to see. Like, look what you tried to do to all of us and you failed. And now you're still in that position, but we're not.
Yes, exactly. It's such a powerful moment. And then how you can sort of like, it's like you light a match for yourself and it's so bright and like unmistakable. And now you can hold it out and other people can come with their match that's not lit and like light it from yours, you know, and then they get their own torch and then they can go light other people's. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's just so neat. I love seeing just this progression. And like, I'm just so proud of all of you who have decided to do this because, you know, we do live in this sort of, or at least for me, like my journey through social media growing up, like it didn't start with like talking about real things like Instagram and MySpace and all that. It's like you're posting food pictures and like your time at the beach and like with family. Like you didn't post your trauma online. And it's like, what a cool way that we've decided to use social media as a way to like help heal each other, you know, and like we're using it for the opposite of really what it was designed for, which was like to traumatize us in a sense and like collect data. And like we could go down a whole internet conspiracy hole, but like it's neat the different ways that there's pockets of hope online, pockets of healing, pockets of people trying to help other people. And like survivors are leading that. You're leading that. And it's just really cool.
Yeah, and it feels like all the other people are getting weeded out too. It's like you know your people. Like my people are coming on all my accounts. I'm like, these are my people. This is what I've waited for 15 years. They're here. They are.
100%. And in addition to TikTok, you are also on YouTube. Do you want to talk a little bit about your YouTube channel also?
Yeah, it's kind of small, but I just talk about my discern the darkness, expose the darkness stuff. That's where my book, where I'm going to release excerpts and stuff of my book. So that's what I do on the TikTok or on the YouTube channel.
That's so awesome. And on these, you obviously you have the comments on both your TikTok channels as well as your YouTube. So this is another way that people could connect with and support you by liking and commenting and sharing your videos and your content.
Yeah, that's great.
And then I'll show this also. We had talked about this, but I didn't show the page. So I'm going to also share Holy Holistics. That way people can see this TikTok channel as well. And this really like, do you want to talk about anything with this? I sort of just gave a general outline, but do you want to talk a little bit about, you know, this and what this has done for your healing journey and kind of like your mission professionally on here?
Yeah, it's done a lot. I mean, I only started this when my aunt died, another trauma, horrible trauma. When she died, this was kind of like a coping mechanism, and I thought that I would get maybe a couple clients for Holy Holistics. And then my videos, they just started taking off, all my holistic stuff, and I mean, God did it. And he boosted all those followers up, and it just kept going. So now this is like my teaching page about Holy Holistics, and if you want to get in contact with me, different things I've done and different things I use through the week and stuff like that. My real life, what I really am, you know, really put in my body every day.
That is so cool. And look, over 61, almost 62,000 followers on here for people interested in learning about how to heal themselves holistically. That's also really cool to see more people coming on board, more naturopathic pathways instead of just allopathic. And I love seeing pages like this grow.
Nobody's getting any better. And I mean, I got myself so in debt trying to get well from Western medicine and all the surgeries. I mean, it's crazy. And then it's like, well, how do you expect me to pay for all that when now I'm disabled? What? It's like, it never works out. They raise the bar every time and we'll never be able to attain it.
100%. Absolutely. Yes. And I think COVID too, going through that, like lifted a veil off a lot of people's eyes who didn't even realize they had a veil. You know, it really exposed the Western medicine model and the different flaws in it and kind of the agendas. And, you know, it kind of brought us back to like, wait, why are plants and natural medicines considered alternative? You know, shouldn't Western medicine be considered alternative? Like, why is stuff right from the earth considered alternative medicine? It's just so bizarre.
Yeah, they changed that in 1910.
Was that it? That was the year
Yes,
that they
the
did that?
Flexner
Wow.
report. Yes, they pay a another peer reviewed thing, because we know they never work. In 1910, they had a peer reviewed, and that's where we started Western medicine. They X'd out all of the complementary and alternative, which was original. That's what they were. And the man who did that lived to be 94, and he only used homeopathy. He didn't even use his own garbage. He didn't use his petroleum products because they would kill him. But we
Oh
do.
my gosh. Right.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they paid for a report to say all this stuff and then demonize holistic practitioners. And they are still demonized today in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, which is really sad. And I know just even years ago, there were different holistic and more like natural medicine doctors and scientists speaking out who mysteriously died, during the
Yeah.
whole COVID thing, which is also very interesting. You see how targeted, just like how survivors are targeted, so are people trying to get these natural treatments out that, hey, you don't have to give millions of dollars to big pharma. Like you can get a plant in your house and consume it. You can get this tincture that's all natural and like it'll help ease your disease, which is pretty incredible, and it's awesome again how you've stumbled on that path and that you became that passionate about it that you started doing it professionally.
Yeah, and my grandma from the foothills of Appalachia, that's how they did everything. They did everything with herbs and plants and stuff like
Oh
that. So even
wow.
though I thought it was silly, I thought grandma never knew nothing. You got to be a nurse to know something. That's what I used to think. But she knew everything, and I've remembered so many things that she's shown me. I'm like, dang, grandma was smart. She really was.
Grandma knew,
Yes, she
our
did.
ancestors, they knew. We look at them and we're like, oh, like life on the farm back then. So glad we don't have to do that. But it's like they knew a thing or two. It probably was a good thing to live on the farm. Like I kind of wish I lived on one now.
Yeah, definitely for the education.
And so I have a couple other just random questions to ask you as a mother and as a survivor. My first being, obviously, there's so many more ways now that predators have access to children online, in schools. There's just a lot of different avenues that didn't exist whenever you and I were children. And so I wanted to ask, like, as a safe parent, somebody who has broken that cycle, there's obviously a lot of safe parents that are going to be listening to this podcast, learning from you on how they can be better for their kids. And I wanted to see what kind of things would you suggest to parents who are worried about abuse or trafficking and wanting to keep their children safe? What things have you done that were different from your own upbringing with your children?
Oh, absolutely everything. Like, number one, my kids, I wouldn't allow sleepovers. No sleepovers. Kids can come here to my house, but you're not going anywhere. And that's how it is today still. Phones for sure. Make sure you know what's going on their phone. Check it make them turn it in at night. Don't let them have it at night. Check what they're doing and who they're talking to. And I mean, just for me, like my kids are homeschooled. Like pull them out of school because there's so much stuff that goes on in there, and there are predators right there. They're all over. They go where the kids are. That's what they do. And there's plenty of other reasons, but I would say that one because they have control, more control than you do of your child for 8 hours a day. They have their mind. You do not. So I would say watch that and just watch Friends and just watch everywhere they go. I watch everybody. And even when my kids did go to school, I got on the school board. I got on the school board there and I watched like a hawk. I went on every kind of field trip that we went to, every time that they stayed anywhere, did stuff for 8th grade. I did all that stuff with them. Right there with them. Followed right along because I don't trust anyone. And I think every parent should be on that. Don't trust anyone. You have no idea who people are.
Thank you for
Just
that.
because
And
they're
not
nice at the baseball game, and that doesn't mean anything at all. You don't know what kind of sexual pleasures they have at home. And pay
100.
attention to people's sexual behaviors. Because if they're running around going, "Oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that," that's just a fetish. The next thing you know, it's rolling into other things. So yeah, it might sound judgmental, but pay attention to that stuff. It matters.
100%. Thank you for all of that. And kind of on those same lines, for parents who are considering homeschooling because they're also frustrated with the school system, what encouragement can you give to parents who might, be scared? Like, oh my gosh, I'm not a teacher. How am I supposed to teach my kids school and sports and like give them the quality of life that school would? How did you encourage yourself to take that step?
Well, I thought the same thing. I didn't think I was a teacher, and I started doing it in 2020. And I was like, man, you don't recreate school. You create your own school for your child. So, like, whatever your child wants to learn about, that's what they can do. You don't want them sit them there and do the stuff that they hate. Like, there's no reason for that. Like, let them explore and do what they want. And you can be a teacher. Believe me, these teachers are not educated like you think. I mean, they're not. They're not anything. You are way better parent than that and a way better educator, and you can do it. And if you've ever thought one time, I should homeschool my kids, do it. Pull them immediately and just do it because you're going to love it. I don't really know anybody who regrets it. Even if you work, even if you do things, there is an alternative way to figure it out. And my kids were so much happier all the way around.
That's awesome. I love that you just like dove into it. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing either. I'm just going to try this and see how it goes. And I
Yeah,
think too, like, you know, being a parent, it's so easy to question yourself because like you just want to hold yourself to just like the highest standard. Like they're your kids. It's the most important job in the whole world. Like
yeah.
parenting should be held in higher regard than like any career that we have, you know? And so I can understand that pressure, but nobody knows children more than the parent. You know, if you're a good, safe parent, like no teacher is going to know how to educate your child how you can. And I love how you embrace that and like recognize that within yourself and your journey. And we're like, I'm better at this than anybody else could be.
Yeah, have faith in yourself. God give you these children, they're yours, and you can do anything, and don't put any limits on your life at all. No limits on homeschool or career, no limits at all. Rebuke all those. No limits on anyone's life. We can do whatever we want. We literally can create our life. And I'm living proof of it. I've created it over the last 15 years, step by step.
Another question I have for you, a little bit of a subject change off parenting. A lot of survivors are waking up now, and some of them want to speak out, some of them don't. That's not necessarily, you know, the goal for everybody, but a lot of people are struggling, whether that's their goal or not. They're internalizing pain. They're coming to terms with, you know, recalled memories that maybe they forgot. They're finally sharing their trauma with somebody. They're going through rejections. There's just a lot of suffering happening, even though it's a really amazing time that, you know, we have here for survivors, like how we were talking about earlier. And I wanted to, as somebody that, for you, as somebody who has come out the other side, like we said, healing's it's not a linear journey. It doesn't necessarily end. It just gets easier to cope with, and it gets better as you get healthier. What advice would you give to victims and survivors who are just struggling? Like they don't want to get up out of bed. They don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. They're hopeless. They're depressed. They're kind of in that rock bottom that you were once in. What would you tell that person that's listening to you right now?
I would say to call on the spirit. There's a spirit here that created you. Call on that first. And I know that's hard for a lot of people, especially survivors. The whole God, all that thing, the names, all that stuff is difficult. But we're ruled by something else. We're spiritual beings. We're not physical beings. We're spirits in this little body, in this vehicle. But there's a spirit here that needs to connect to the creator. I think that first and foremost, and then watch stuff like this. Like get on this channel and watch all these shows. Watch these people come through and survive and make it to the other side. And it's just a difficult time. Everybody's going to be in a different spot with how they're healing and how they're feeling. And it doesn't have to be public. And also, I would suggest writing in a journal. Write your stuff out. Just write it all out. It helps process left to right brain. And it's nice to have it written out for you. And believe yourself. Trust yourself. Trust yourself first and foremost. You know better for yourself. No one else. No one else does.
Great advice. And I want to get sort of the same perspective for people that are either helping or aspire to help survivors, whether they're therapists or spouses or friends. You know, what can we do to help the culture and environment be a more healing, accepting place for survivors? What can everybody else do to help support them?
Well, I think just stating that you believe them, believing them is a big one because we're already doubting ourselves and like that couldn't have been physically possible, but it was. Like just believe them and definitely believe the children. Children do not make up intricate abuse. They do not. And there's so many times that I've seen in the court systems, there's clear abuse. They'll be like, that didn't happen. It's like, how can you not say that from these little children that have said this? Just believe the children. Believe the children and keep going. I don't know where we're going to go, but I feel like it's going to get big. And I think it's our turn now. We've been stomped down this whole time, and now it's our turn. It is our turn. And I
Amen,
think people
sister.
like us, empathetic people and people who have been through things, I think we're the ones that are going to be running things from now on in a different manner.
I couldn't agree more. You guys are really paving the way. And it's interesting. I was talking to another survivor the other day about, you know, it's really embarrassing, honestly, that we're learning, society is learning about how to help survivors and how to help treat trauma and help heal and support through survivors, through the actual victims. Like this should be stuff that people already know. Like we should be the ones stepping up to help you so you can spend time healing and not educating us. Although we need your education, of course, and I'm so grateful, but it's like there should already be people out there that are doing this type of education that know, like, you guys should be able to be in your homes healing instead of being like, well, nobody else is doing this, I guess I have to, but I just want to like thank you and honor you for taking the time to, not only come on here, but for all the advocacy that you do, for all the education. You've taken that responsibility really seriously, and it's beautiful watching you blossom from where you were and like picturing just, the horrors that you were going through and like that darkness that had to have just been so consuming to where you are now. Somebody could meet you right now and have no idea that you ever went through one moment of abuse in your life because of all the healing that you've done, and how much heaviness you've lifted off your shoulders. And so thank you for bearing the burden of so many other survivors, for taking time to educate when like I said, we should already have support systems in place. Like you guys should just be able to heal, not have to educate the whole public on it. But thank you for your efforts in doing that and helping people like me that didn't go through what you did, learn about it and, help encourage us to help sort of jump on board and learn with you.
Well, thank you. And I think just acknowledging, people don't want to acknowledge anything. Just acknowledge it and be aware of it. Like our family was so screwed up, blah, there we go. Big deal. Now we can work on it. Now we've said it. Like nobody's family's perfect. There's stuff everywhere. Like we can all work on it. Just be aware of it. That way it doesn't have any control over you at all. You're aware and you're paying attention.
100%. And was there anything else from your notes or from your testimony that you wanted to share today that we didn't get to?
I don't think so. I think we covered quite a bit.
We covered quite a bit, I would say. Oh my goodness.
2011. I mean, I could go into depth with recordings and document those kind of things, but we talked about, doing something else.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be interesting to have you back.
Yeah, I have some stuff for that.
Yeah, it'd be fun to do some deep dives with you. And so for anybody listening, if you guys have questions for Brittany, if you guys have questions for her professionally on her holistic side of her career and that aspect of her life, if you guys have questions for her as a survivor and as a former victim on healing that you guys would like to know, or any part of her testimony, we breezed by a lot of things, but we could obviously go a lot deeper into some of these elements. So I would love if you guys had some suggestions. We could get Brittany back on for part 2 and help clarify anything that you guys wanted to learn more about. So leave that down in the comments, or you guys could reach out directly to Brittany through the channels that she mentioned earlier, TikTok, her Linktree, and you guys can directly connect with her and ask her questions there. She can answer, and maybe we can use those on a future podcast episode and answer it to a broader audience. So I'd encourage you guys to reach out to her. And is there anything that you wanted to close on, Brittany, or share before we wrap up?
I'm just grateful to be here. I'm grateful to get to talk and tell my story. And I think it's beautiful that they literally silenced us 15 years ago, almost to the date. And here I am talking about this, right when you guys said we couldn't. But we did. We finally did. Still got that big mouth y'all don't like.
We love it.
Yeah, in 2011, they kept telling me to shut up. You need to shut up. And I said, I'll never shut up. And I haven't.
And I was going to say, you kept that promise.
Yeah, I'm not.
Well, thank you again, Brittany, for coming on. And like I said, everybody, check the show notes. I'll have all of her information there as well as mine. We couldn't do this without you guys. You guys are the foundation and backbone of this. Without you, we'd be screaming into an empty black abyss. So thank you all on the other side of the screen for caring. And I'd really appreciate it if you guys subscribe to Brittany's YouTube and go follow her on social media. It's a free, easy way you guys could support survivors. It's just from your phone. Go support them online and go reach out and share their content and engage with it. And reach out to her as well from her Linktree if you guys would like to hire her professionally. as a holistic nutritionist and practitioner. I'll have that link down below too. So you guys, thank you so much for listening. God bless you all, and we will see you next time.